Okay, good evening. I'll call the meeting to order. This is Select Board regular session and executive session on April 15th. We are being recorded, and please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we will begin with the town administrator's report.
Good evening.
Being recorded.
I already said it was being recorded, but yes, it is doubly being recorded.
Good evening. Just have a few updates. First, I wanted to report on the trash RFP. We received 2 proposals that meet the criteria that we laid out. We've developed a list of questions to follow up for each of them. The team that's making the first cut included town staff, Gino, myself, folks from the Solid Waste Advisory Committee, Mary Ellen as their liaison. It was a good discussion. We went for almost 2.5 hours the other day, just going through each proposal and making sure that we had questions that could be either applied to both or needed to be clarified with one or the other. We hope to get those answers back the end of this week, beginning of next. And as of right now, I think tentatively we have Tuesday on the books to have another internal meeting. From there, we'll be able to get a little more detail, but you can anticipate that we will be coming back to you with more information shortly. Quick turnaround is the goal, and I think the discussion we had the other day was really useful. On the Hawthorne lease, it is something that I know we spoke about last week. We are still working with KP to integrate the discussions we've had into a lease, so I anticipate we'd be back before you on the 29th with that for your final review. I had touched base with the proponents today to just explain sort of where we were in time, and they understand where we are. But again, agreement in principle, it's a question of taking the draft lease that was part of the RFP and then sort of adding in all the other necessary language to make a full lease. And it also sort of represents the discussions we've had on the margins. No huge changes, but we'll walk through them individually with you all on the 29th in advance of that discussion as well. On the Archer Street project, I wanted to give an update here because I know members of the board have heard and some may have visited as well. I had the opportunity on the Solid Waste Advisory Monday afternoon, where I stepped out at the end of Solid Waste Advisory to meet with a few of the neighbors, walked the site with them. It was a really good opportunity to hear the concerns directly, as opposed to the emails and phone calls that I've had, and to sort of engage in a broad discussion about it. In addition, the Conservation Commission, just for everyone's benefit, has noticed a meeting for the 28th, where this is one of the items that they will be going over. And that is a virtual meeting, will be available obviously online for folks to attend. Construction work is paused at the very least until after the Concom decision. So there will be no other construction done at this time as we work through this effort to verify information and be able to move forward. Also last week, I had the opportunity to meet with the Board of Health for the first time in one of their meetings because they're generally in conflict with this meeting. They had moved to Thursday, so I had the opportunity to sit down with them. We talked a lot about regionalization, load balancing as we move forward with a different staffing model compared to the past few years, going back to 21 or 22 when we went to 2 full-time. And it was a really good discussion. And we also had even George Allen there as well, who will be an incoming member. So it was sort of like having 4 members there for the one evening, and I plan to attend again in the near future. I talked to the chair, Argy Cooper, a couple times since, and so the idea is that we will look at regionalization opportunities and see where the load balancing might be beneficial to find partners in communities nearby. On the Finance Committee and Capital Improvement Committee, Patrick and I, since last Wednesday, have met with them twice, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. We've had some really good discussions. It feels like everyone's moving forward towards a conclusion for where we should land for this year. So it's been, a fruitful discussion all around. We had a discussion on the capital improvement plan as well as the budget, and both are on the agenda later tonight as a sort of wide open discussion and entertaining any motions there may be, so we can fill you in more then. The things that we've talked about there that I just want to highlight again, places where there's some flux in the numbers. On healthcare, changes due to enrollment could have either a positive or negative effect as we get to the end of this month and understand what the census looks like. The Essex Tech assessment was preliminary, so that may change up or down again as well. We're hoping to get more clarity as we move forward. The property and liability insurance we are expecting very close to town meeting as we had last year or even shortly thereafter, but the number that we have in there, I believe, is a 9% increase, which was their very conservative estimate, so we're hopeful that that will be even above where we need, but we'll continue to let you know. And then there's obviously the opportunity for state assessments and aid to change, both positively and negatively. We're basing everything on the governor's budget. The House budget was actually announced today. We have not yet updated anything to reflect it. The biggest change there was that there was a slight increase in Chapter 70 funding per student. So it could have a meaningful impact if that survives through the Senate process and also with the governor. But we're going to have to wait and see where that is. That's another one of those places that we're in flux. And then the trash contract is obviously something that's currently a placeholder that as we get to the end of the month, we will have more information on where we anticipate landing there. But, those are all things that I wanted to highlight. Looking forward to town meeting. I also just want to let you know we met with the outgoing and incoming moderator, the town clerk and myself, to sort of get the benefit of Mike's experience and make sure that we were preparing everything we could so that Ryan is successful. So we look forward to continuing those discussions.
Subject to the election.
Subject to the election with the only candidate running. I mean...
Well, he's the only one running, so.
Stranger things have happened. Thank you.
No, I just,
Are you launching a sticker campaign?
no,
or-
I'm just,
Okay.
very happy for Mr. Hale to be running, but,
Sure. With the likely incoming, is that better? I apologize. And also worked with Katie, our clerk, to make sure that we sort of have everything in line, as it will be her first town meeting here, and also potentially a brand-new moderator unless something
Well,
unforeseen happens. Is that a better couching for you?
trying to bring up.
Okay, I know. I think we're both doing that.
Yeah, try.
And then, for tonight, we have the warrant as part of the discussion, so that's the only other sort of town meeting related thing. Look forward to any further discussion we may engage in. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you all may have.
I had asked you a question last week, I guess it was, about the status of the major climate leader grant. I don't know if you had an opportunity to find out what the status was on that.
So the idea currently, as the capital plan sits, is that we would seek climate leader technical assistance in the year ahead to do design for what would ultimately be the canopy here. The future project would be the significant funding towards the canopy construction in an out year. Is there more information that you would like beyond that?
I guess that's it. Sounds like a little bit of a development, but maybe I'm not tracking it properly, so, okay.
Okay.
I have a question on the Archer Street situation. Like, how long is that gonna take to figure out, or like what's the whole process there? Is the neighborhood engaged? Because we did get a lot of emails.
So anyone who emailed that an email came to me, and now that I've actually met with the Smiths, I've spoken either via email or on the phone or in person with everyone who I heard from or who was forwarded to me by you all. The first step will be DEP has kicked back the question around what was properly delineated to the Concom, which is the normal process.
Right.
That will begin on the 28th. I'm uncertain of what they will decide then. I think we'll have to wait and see. But certainly our next meeting currently is scheduled for the 29th or the 6th immediately after that. And on either one of those dates, I'm happy to provide a more concrete schedule. The step that we're waiting for right now is stop the construction work while we get through the Concom effort. And if there is, an opportunity to move forward from there, we will communicate with you all where we stand, as well as the neighbors, obviously, anyone who's reached out. And then I know that Frank and his wife have sort of helped to organize the immediate neighborhood, and they offer to make sure that anything we get to them will also be shared with their immediate neighbors.
Okay. Good.
Anything else? Okay, thank you very much, Nick. We'll move on to public comment. So as a reminder, public comment is limited to 3 minutes. You'll come up to the mic, state your name and your address, please. If you have a public comment online, please raise your hand and we will take you in order. We'll try to alternate between online and in person. I do have some public comments that were sent to me via email that I will read post everybody in the room. And I did have one individual reach out to ask to go first, so please, Suzanne Wright, if you wouldn't mind, you can begin.
I literally have guests at my dining room table.
Also, Nick is going to keep time this evening for sake of ease, so.
So at like 30 seconds, I'll give you a little, okay.
Hopefully, I will not take that long. I wouldn't be here if,
State your name and your
oh,
address.
sorry, Suzanne Wright, 11 Hardy, oh, no, not anymore, 6 Humphrey Terrace. I forget, I say it all the time, I drive there all the time. I wouldn't be here except for hearing or reading in the Tides that Ms. Fletcher's apology was maybe less than genuine. I don't even know if that's really the word, but mostly it was followed by a disclaimer that said everyone violates the code of conduct, like that makes it okay. But I know this was said about this board, but I took a lot of offense to the comment because I've been a volunteer in this town for 30 years, most recently on the school committee for 12 years. And I know that my board and other volunteers in this town take the code of conduct as an oath. In all my 30 years of volunteering with this town, I have never, ever once overstepped or abused my power. And it's hurtful to hear that everyone does that when that is, in fact, not true. That whole independent investigation that the Select Board approved shows Ms. Fletcher ignoring procedures, lacking professionalism and respectfulness, and acting less than honesty. And as a school committee member, I've been watching Ms. Fletcher for years, watching her strong-arming, disrespecting, and disrupting our school personnel. Her attempts at got-you accusations and attacks have been disingenuous, they've been harmful to school employees, and in complete disregard for the collaborative efforts that we've all tried between town boards. I've witnessed the strain she's put on our paid school professionals and the school committee, over which she has no responsibility or authority. I've seen the discord and the retention issues at Town Hall that are a direct result of Ms. Fletcher's interference and at times personal vendettas. Finally, I've watched Mary Ellen Fletcher bully the Finance Committee and other committees and boards, including the Select Board, and create turmoil, which has rendered this board less effective than our town deserves and should be demanding. But as a school committee member, I didn't need the findings of this report to know this about Ms. Fletcher's unacceptable behavior, and I argue that you didn't either. We've all known about this, and we should have been having this discussion much sooner because we have been having it behind closed doors, and we should have been having it publicly, and shame on all of us. But at the very minimum, Ms. Fletcher should be censured. But really, I believe Ms. Fletcher should resign. And I hope that you can join me in calls for her to resign. Thanks.
We will take the next public comment from online. Mr. Demento has his hand up, so if you could allow him to unmute. Just state your name, address, and you have 3 minutes, Mr. Demento.
Let me know when it starts.
You can go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Bill Demento, 1008 Paradise Road. And I would like to address something that appeared in the Swampscott Tides today with an interview with a member of the Select Board, Danielle Leonard, where she said, your board never violates any of these code of conducts. And I want to point out, she violated the code of conduct in the article when she is quoted, and we know the Tides is on a vendetta of its own, but she quoted Danielle as saying, this guy didn't even live in Swampscott. This is all complete nonsense. How did the Tides report say from a non-resident, unless she knew that he was a non-resident from the public record? The redacted report doesn't say where he lives. There's no mention of where he lives. The only way anyone in the town knows that he is a non-resident now is because Danielle released something that was in executive session. That's a violation of the code of conduct. David and Doug are famous for the February 8th letter, right after the LDA on the Veterans Project. What did they do? They wrote a letter to B'nai B'rith, asking them to use their termination right and cancel the contract. Right after, and a clear violation, so much so that it panicked the people from B'nai B'rith. And Mary Ellen, the then chairman, had to write to them and say, don't worry about it, it's the law, and it's fine. Now, how is a violation on use of their authority? They signed the letter as Doug Thompson, Swampscott Select Board, David Grishman, Swampscott Select Board. Now, that leaves Kate on November 28th.
Oh, you've
The
gone,
complaint.
sorry, you,
Hello?
go ahead.
It doesn't say I'm muted.
Nope, now you're muted. There you go. Go ahead, Mr. Demento.
Thank you. You know, in the Congress, they say, I want my time back.
It's yours.
Thank you. Katie, when you sent that message, you had a telephone conversation on November 28th, according to the redacted
30 seconds.
report.
You have 30 seconds, Mr. Demento.
Thank you very much. According to that, you sent that, had a conversation with David, you sent him the report. The code of conduct clearly says you are to send that to the town administrator, and he is the investigator, and no one should have anyone else say but him. But you broke the code of conduct by doing that. In addition, all of this stuff, the release of the redacted report is also a violation because the code of conduct says it shall remain an executive matter. I don't care if Mary Ellen and half the town wants it public, it says it shall remain an executive session.
Mr.
You don't have
Demento,
the power right there.
that is-
Thank you very much. And I will watch the rest of the Inquisition. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional public comment? Please.
Good evening. My name is Glenn Pastor, 49 Suffolk Ave, member of the school committee. I come here tonight not to comment on any specific accusations, but rather to relay experiences which I believe are very revealing as to the conduct of Ms. Fletcher. I will preface my remarks by saying that the information I bring forth is 100% accurate and supported by documentation, which I'm happy to provide, which I think you will see a pattern of overstepping and the lack of respect for protocol, which apparently is the root of the reason why we're here this evening. To start, many times, at least 3 that I found via email, and at least 2 that I found via video, we have asked the school department that any questions regarding the budget or any information needed from the school department, any and all requests for information must go through the respective chairs of the Select Board and the Finance Committee. After those requests are received, the chairs would send an email to the superintendent and myself, or whoever is the chair of the school committee, regarding the needed material. We are happy to fulfill any requests handled in this manner as time allows. We've been very clear. We do that because employees of the school department need to work. That's their job. Their job is not to answer questions 24/7. So I'm going to talk about 3 recent issues that Ms. Fletcher has overstepped and has broken protocol. Firstly, on Wednesday, February 4th, in the morning, Diane Marchese, who at that time was the executive assistant to the town administrator and select board, sent an email to the superintendent's executive assistant, and to Cheryl Stella. Hi, Mary Ellen Fletcher is asking for a copy of the proposed school budget and presentation in anticipation of tomorrow's in anticipation of tomorrow's presentation. Can you email that to me, please? Thank you. It's a clear violation of the rules that we have all agreed to play with. I then took that email and I sent it to the
30
board.
seconds.
I'm sorry?
30 seconds.
Okay, thank you. I sent that to the board chair. Lastly, and most shockingly, this past Saturday, after everything that happened last Tuesday, Ms. Fletcher sent an email to Superintendent Kalishman requesting some sort of information about an endowment. This is 4 days after the last Tuesday event. It's also not the first time that Ms. Fletcher has sent an email only
That's
to
time.
the superintendent. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Glenn. We have another hand raised online. Ms. DiCillo, if you could please allow her to unmute her mic. Ms. DiCillo, you should be able to unmute.
Trying to.
There you go.
Okay, you get, okay, thank you. I'm Mary DiCillo, and I am a former member of the school committee. I'm also a town meeting member from precinct 4. I would just like to respond, there's lots of video that can be brought up in this matter, and lots of different matters, because we are fortunate to have a good recording session ability. Last April 10th, 2025, 2 weeks before the town election, Ms. Wright, who I have worked with for many years for the schools, I was sort of shocked. I'd always had respect for Ms. Wright, and I was shocked to tune into a school committee meeting and watch a meeting that, from my perspective, and somebody who studied group behavior and group work as a professional person training, I watched her raise an issue of wanting to get a vote of no confidence. This was last April. And I watched the rest of the school committee with Mr. Pastor, the chair, orchestrating, to my view as a citizen, getting comment from each of the school committee members. I was stunned that one committee was actually commenting on another committee in that manner. In 30 years of living here, and I've been very involved, I've really not seen that kind of behavior. So there are many instances of people crossing boundaries here. I'm not going to comment on the current situation with what did not happen with Mary Ellen Fletcher, but to say that for Ms. Wright to say that she has never violated in all of her time, I have again had the most respect for her. She was somebody who has done tireless work for this town, and so much so when we were opening the new high school, volunteered to be the person who received all the deliveries to the new school. And I'm heartfelt. I'm just mystified by why this is the vendetta, the vehemence with which this is being pursued. It strikes me as wrong, and I think that people
30
on
seconds.
committees have to really search their souls here about what we're doing. These are ways of deflecting attention away from things that we really need to be paying attention to. And thank you very much. I wasn't going to speak tonight, but I couldn't let that just pass by without a comment being made. Thank you.
Please approach the mic.
Hi, can you hear me? No? Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Danielle Strauss, and I live at 15 Duke Street here in Swampscott. I've been a resident of this town for 35 years and a town meeting member for over 25 years. My husband, Matt, served on the select board for 6 years, including 2 as chair, and I recently retired after 20 years as recreation director. I share this background because with experience comes insight. I'd like to briefly speak on 2 topics this evening. First, during my time as the recreation director, I worked under 3 town administrators and alongside many select board members. Over the years, I've occasionally seen board members overstep their roles. In some cases, this was addressed. One member was even censured, while in others, it was handled privately or at times not addressed at all. I respectfully ask this board and future boards remain mindful of their boundaries, of their role, and remember that the town administrator is the individual entrusted with the day-to-day operations of the town. My second point is to thank, and so this is a completely different topic, is to thank David Grishman and Doug Thompson for their years of service. I believe this is their last meeting. I'd especially like to thank David and recognize him. Before David joined the select board, the town administrator instructed me to meet with him and work with him directly regarding community events. At that time, he brought forward ideas such as Bentwater at the Beach event and Swamptoberfest, initiatives that he helped envision and I was proud to help bring to life. Once he became a select board member and liaison to recreation, David continued to work closely with my department. He attended many events with his family, stayed to help when needed, and consistently offered encouragement and thoughtful ideas. He played a role in shaping events like Humphrey Street Block Party, helped secure sponsors for several programs, including the 4th of July celebration, and encouraged me to advocate for a new movie screen. David was not only supportive of the department, but also supportive of me personally. So in closing, thank you, David, for your dedication to our community, for your partnership with recreation, and for your support over the years, because there were many times I needed support because of some of the things that go on here. So I thank you.
Thank you, Danielle.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. I'm Jackie Camerlingo, 1 Bellevue Road, former program coordinator for Swampscott Recreation. I'm here because the findings of an investigation were made public last week, and they confirm what some of us have experienced firsthand. The investigation found sufficient credible evidence that Select Board Member Fletcher violated the Code of Conduct by directing town staff and inserting herself into a police matter. That is not a misunderstanding. That is an abuse of position, using the authority of an elected role to influence actions that should be handled through proper channels. And for some of us, this misuse of power is not new. During my time working in the rec department, I received direct texts and phone calls from Ms. Fletcher asking me to carry out tasks. These were not casual suggestions. These were requests made with the weight of her position behind them. As a new employee at the time, that created real pressure. I was being asked to respond to an elected official while also being told by my director that doing so would violate the proper chain of command. This is what misuse of power looks like. Not always loud or obvious, but putting employees in positions where they feel they have to choose between doing their job correctly and responding to authority. When I raised that concern to Ms. Fletcher, I was dismissed. When I sought clarity from another board member as to the proper chain of command, I was told the chain of command was nothing more than an example of the former TA's totalitarian control. As the organizer of the farmers market, I had an interaction where Ms. Fletcher pointed her finger at me and accused me of screwing with her livelihood because I approved another dog treat vendor to sell at the market that season. That was not a policy discussion. That was an attempt to use power and intimidation to influence a decision that was well within my role. For context, the market regularly includes multiple vendors offering similar products. That's how a community market works. That moment marked a clear shift. I went from being, in her words, her favorite employee in town to someone who felt increasingly targeted. After that, it often felt like the work I had done was being undone, not through process, but through influence. One example of this is the inclusion sports program. When I explained that the rec department was excited to host this inclusive program at the new elementary school, Ms. Fletcher dismissed the program as being no different from any other sports program in town. The following week, we were informed by the school that we could no longer use that space due to complicated arrangements. Again, I won't speculate beyond the facts, but when decisions shift immediately after an elected official expresses opposition, it raises real and valid concerns about how power is being used behind the scenes.
30 seconds.
After I was told I would not be the rec director, I approached Ms. Fletcher and asked a simple question. What changed? I referenced the messages she had sent me 18 months earlier. Her response was anything but professional. Immediately, she raised her voice, threw her hands in the air, and hollered, "This is harassment. Do you even work here anymore?" I was still employed by the town for another 2 weeks after that. This happened in town hall, in front of others. Employees were uncomfortable enough to leave the area. Nothing came of it. What is most concerning is that these are not isolated moments. They reflect a pattern, one where position is used to pressure, to bypass process, and to avoid accountability. I later learned that everything my director had told me about the chain of command was clearly outlined in the Code of Conduct, a code this board upheld and one that Ms.
Jackie,
Fletcher herself
that's
had
time.
not signed up until late last summer. The investigation now confirms what these experiences
Jackie, please,
may
that's
say.
time. Please. Thank you.
Good evening, Miguel Contreras, 46 Buena Vista. Statements that I'll make are views expressed personally by me, not by the committee or as a member of the school committee. But I'm here to speak regarding the recent investigation and the finding concerning the code of conduct violated by Mary Ellen. Public service is built on the foundation of trust and transparency, and when trust is broken through documented actions, not hearsay, but verifiable conduct, we must address it. The investigation report outlines a troubling progression of events that moves past a simple misunderstanding and into the realm of intentional misconduct. There's the dishonesty around contact. So the member stated that they did not email this citizen in question, and they only later confirmed that they did once they had an attorney confirm for them. So at that point, you would kind of assume that that is a misunderstanding. The next part is that it moved from a misunderstanding into a clear lapse of judgment where ill intent could be seen in the use of authority to intimidate, as the member actively went to the police station and entered the building and spoke with staff there. After that initial incident as well, the member reached out to the citizen again to follow up with them. So these are not assumptions or interpretations of he said, she said, but they are documented actions that reflect a pattern of behavior unbecoming of this board. Tonight, the board is considering a motion for censure. If passed, Mary Ellen will be stripped of her ability to serve as chair or vice chair, will be removed from her subcommittees, and will no longer act as a liaison for any other board. Functionally, you will be a lame duck member, unable to effectively represent the interests of our towns and perform the duties of which you are elected. You will have to check your emails and confirm that you are getting the communications and read them. So, for the sake of the board's integrity and to allow this town to move forward without the constant cloud of misconduct, having other boards wonder if you're being honest and transparent, or do they need to have a lawyer present to make sure that honesty and transparency is there? I would respectfully ask that you resign from your seat, and if you choose not to, I strongly urge the remaining board members to vote in favor of a censure to uphold the standards of our code of conduct and to protect themselves from any legal liability. Thank you.
There has been no hands raised. Yep, so yes, I am alternating.
Liz Smith, Precinct 3, Town Meeting Member. I want to address an issue that goes directly to the integrity of this board and the public trust. This is not a matter of allegation or speculation. An investigation has already established the facts. a member of the Swampscott Select Board unilaterally directed a town employee, a police lieutenant, to investigate a complaint against another member of the board without any vote, any authorization, and outside the chain of command. That alone is a serious breach of governance and abuse of authority. That same investigation also found that this member stated she was out to get a fellow select board member, the very individual who is the subject of that complaint. That is not just inappropriate, it reflects bias and prejudgment. But there is a second issue. This matter was discussed in executive session under the complaint exemption, but the Attorney General has made clear that executive session must be narrowly limited to the complaint itself. Once this board reviewed the investigative report and began considering what action to take, that became public business, and it should have been discussed in open session. Apparently, the Select Board decided in executive session that a mere apology would be sufficient to rectify the situation. We, the people of Swampscott, had a right to hear that discussion and the reasoning that led to that decision. Transparency is not optional. It is the foundation of public trust. An apology is not accountability. It does not reflect the seriousness of the conduct. Censure is necessary because this investigation is just one instance that follows years of violation of the code of conduct by this Select Board member, behavior that is well known, frequently discussed, and has never been adequately or publicly dealt with until now. An appropriate next step beyond censure would be an investigation of this pattern of inappropriate behavior by this Select Board member. Tonight, you have an opportunity to respond appropriately. Censure is on your agenda, and this is exactly what censure is for. Rules matter, and no Select Board member is above them. If standards are not enforced when they are clearly violated, they are not standards at all. The public depends on unbiased and professional behavior by its elected chief executive board. I urge you to vote for censure.
Katie Arrington, 40 Roy Street. Mary Ellen Fletcher uses her status and influence as a select board member to cajole people into doing what she wants. If you dare to disagree or you don't cave to her demands, she harasses you both by the sheer number of phone calls, texts, and emails. During those interactions, she will relentlessly call you names. This was the case back in April of 2024 when I ran for select board. We were supposed to have a second debate hosted by the Daily Item. I was unable to attend due to my child's medical emergency. Select Board member Fletcher referred to me in these countless interactions, relentless interactions, as a puppet, stupid, and a waste of a person. It is time for the drama to stop. She needs real consequences for her actions. The investigation recommends censuring Ms. Fletcher through public and/or written notice that the official has violated the code of conduct. We should follow through with that recommendation. I urge you to vote to censure Select Board member Fletcher. Thank you.
Thank you. Anita Farber Robertson, Precinct 4, town meeting member. I've lived in Swampscott for 35 years, and I've been a neighbor of Mary Ellen's for 15 years. And she has been an invaluable neighbor, and several of the neighbors have asked me to come and speak in support of Mary Ellen. I don't want to disagree with what people have said have been their experiences, because people's experiences are their own, and I trust that they are true. Among the things I do know is Mary Ellen lives around the corner from the police station, as do I. And so I can certainly imagine Mary Ellen walking into the police station and saying, "Have you seen this email?" which is what she said she did. And they said no. And she said, well, here, deal with it. I mean, that's not, to me, that's not an abuse of power. It might have been sloppy, but it's not really an abuse of power. But that's, I don't want to quibble with the investigation. The concern I have is this board has had a history over time of bad behavior to each other that has been egregious. I have seen Mary Ellen be subjected by horrible behavior by Peter Spilios. Nobody did anything about it. I was mortified on behalf of my town. We have seen a lot of bad behavior. I think accountability is essential, and it's a good thing for us to say now, okay, from now on we're going to step up, and we're going to start cleaning up our act, and we're not going to let people misbehave, and we're not going to let people shout at each other. We're not going to let people do things that have been going on for years, unstopped. I would like it to stop, but you don't stop it by putting it all on Mary Ellen. Mary Ellen apologized. An apology is what an adult does when they did a wrong thing. It's not for us to say whether that's a sincere apology. That's mind reading. She did the appropriate thing. I think the thing is for us to take ownership and say from here on in, we will hold each other accountable, and we will no longer yell at each other. We will no longer call each other names, and we will no longer impugn negative intent when we can't mind read. I think we need to make a covenant and agreement together from here on forward to be civil, all of us. Mary Ellen, David Grisham, Katie, everybody
20 seconds.
Together.
If there's no additional comment, I will read the comments that have, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Tasia Vasilio, and I'm a resident on Lewis Road, town meeting member, and a former member of the Board of Assessors for nearly 9 years. I'd like my comments to be included verbatim in the record from tonight's meeting. I'm here tonight because I feel compelled to speak about fairness, accountability, and the standards we choose to uphold as a town. I am deeply concerned with the inconsistency in how accountability is being applied by the Select Board. Recently, we've watched Select Board member Mary Ellen Fletcher be publicly criticized over a mistake that she has addressed, acknowledged, and apologized for. Tonight, your meeting agenda calls to review this matter again and to consider further disciplinary action. During his time on the board, Select Board member David Grishman has demonstrated a pattern of unprofessional behavior, at times with deeply personal attacks against town elected officials, volunteers, advocates, and staff. Yet no action has been taken by this board. Where is the accountability? In 2024, while I was serving as chair of the Board of Assessors, Mr. Grishman publicly and falsely accused me of corruption. That is a serious allegation that he made without ever reaching out to me to ask questions or seek clarification. A former town employee reported that Mr. Grishman, along with the former town administrator, also brought this accusation to the press and encouraged that employee to participate. The employee later released confidential and unredacted documents to the Lynn item. This matter was investigated by the town and the findings were formally documented. However, no follow-up was ever taken. Additionally, it was brought to light that a building permit was not pulled for a basement renovation on Mr. Grishman's property. Not only is a permit required by law, but it also directly impacts the town tax revenue. It appears as though Mr. Grishman was never required to come into compliance with that permit. I personally raised my concerns with all of you on this board, and you each left me with the impression that you understood and agreed Mr. Grishman's behavior toward me was not acceptable. So I have to ask, why has there been no public accountability? Why the silence? Several of Mr. Grishman's and other board members' actions are clear violations of the code of conduct, and this double standard sends a troubling message. It tells people that some are held to one set of rules while others are shielded from consequences. I also want to highlight one of the less considered impacts of Mr. Grishman's unprofessionalism and aggressive attacks. The pressure these have put on my family is the primary reason I have chosen not to run for re-election. When dedicated volunteers and public servants are subjected to unfounded personal attacks without recourse, it discourages good people from stepping forward. We cannot afford that as a community. So tonight, I am asking this board to reflect. What standards are you upholding, and are they being applied equally? Will you follow through on the examples I have brought to you tonight? Because accountability should not be selective. It should be consistent, transparent, and fair. Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to read into the record the, I'm sorry, Ms. Lau. If you could allow her to unmute. Please state your name.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great, thanks. Maura Lau, Outlook Road. Sorry, I'm just haphazardly jumping on here because I happened to catch this on the TV. I only heard about this incident last week at the very end of watching your meeting, and I have to say it was horrifying, David Grishman, to see you making accusations at somebody else for behavior that you have repeatedly presented on board multiple times. And your actions last July, and you know exactly what I'm speaking about, and so does Doug, and so does all the other members, I'm sure there, were terrible, irresponsible, and nasty. And it was all done in retaliation with you and your pal. You should be ashamed of yourself, and you should have resigned then. And you should have all forced him to resign, but nobody did. Nobody acted on it, because people do not, all of you, and past boards as well, do not hold each other accountable. For over a year, I stood at nearly every select board meeting to speak to process and accountability and dignity, and it has pretty much been ignored. So frankly, I can't listen to any of you or many of the things that go on any longer. I've kind of just tuned it out. And it's a shame, because I do realize you all have wonderful ideas, but the tone and the just the nastiness and the phony baloney that seems to permeate the board at some point, I find it puzzling that we're here yet again. But other people have kind of gotten off free, or with less harsh approaches. I don't know the details other than what I heard on last week's meeting about Mary Ellen's role. It sounds terrible. It sounds unprofessional. But it is a long list of unprofessional things that seem to have happened. Frankly, I'd like to see you all gone. I think that might be an approach. But I'm not thrilled with all the characters that are running for, for select board now either, and the direction that it might take our town.
30 seconds.
But, I guess people in glass houses, Mr. Grishman, and I just needed to say that. Good night.
Okay. So I have two public comments to read into the record. This is from Nate McNamee. Hi, Chair Phelan. I'm writing to you today to express my strong support for Mary Ellen Fletcher and to urge the Select Board to move forward from the recent highly politicized noise surrounding her code of conduct breach. I saw that the Select Board meeting this evening yet again has this item on the agenda, and unfortunately our family is unable to attend as we are managing a newborn. 6 weeks. Congratulations, Nate. But I'd like to have this letter read in at the meeting if possible. My wife Brittany and I moved to Swampscott in 2021, and shortly after settling in, we began tuning into the select board meetings. We were immediately impressed by Mary Ellen's ability to advocate for issues that truly matter to residents. We quickly came to appreciate her no-nonsense style and her unique ability to cut through the noise created by former members to make tangible progress. Since then, we have had the privilege of getting to know Mary Ellen personally and are proud to call her a friend. She genuinely cares about this town, makes the time to listen to residents' priorities, and actively helps people understand the complex issues the board is working through. Recently, Mary Ellen made a well-intentioned mistake by reaching out to the police related to an implied hit-and-run accident. While this ultimately constituted a breach of the code of conduct, she did exactly what a person of high character does. She took full accountability and issued a public apology. Unfortunately, several members of the board have chosen to make this small issue a primary focus, actively pursuing greater action against her. What is deeply frustrating as a resident is the glaring double standard. These same individuals have likely committed their own code of conduct breaches, utilizing their own titles of select board members to pursue their own prerogatives, VA housing. And yet there was no accountability taken by them for those actions. Instead of doing the work the town needs, these personally motivated attacks has generated weeks of acrimonious noise. Local media and Facebook pages are entirely dominated by this distraction, pulling focus away from the actual issues impacting Swampscott. We see enough power-seeking acrimony and performative outrage at the national and state political stages. There's absolutely no space for this in our small-town politics. I respectfully ask you, as the chair, lead the board in moving on from this matter. It is time to stop pursuing Mary Ellen and return the board's focus to the real work that Swampscott needs to get done. Sincerely, Nate McNamee, Farragut Road, Swampscott. Second comment. Dear Chair Phelan, I am unable to attend the upcoming public meet. I'm sorry, this is Amy O'Connor. I am unable to attend the upcoming public comment, and I submit this letter in response to the Clifford and Kenny investigation dated March 25th, 26th. The findings in this report are serious. The investigation concluded that Ms. Fletcher violated the Select Board's Code of Conduct by directing police action outside of her authority, bypassing proper governance channels, failing to treat a fellow elected official with appropriate professional respect, and making inappropriate public statements. This should not be viewed as an isolated incident. While these findings are now formally documented, they reflect a pattern of behavior that I observed during my tenure on school committee, beginning during her time on finance committee and continuing through her role as select board. In my final 2 years on school committee, Ms. Fletcher repeatedly bypassed established lines of communication, contacting school leadership directly rather than working through the select board chair, the town administrator, or the school committee chair. These interactions often involved requests for information, at times sensitive in nature, and when responses did not align with her expectations, escalated to attempts to direct actions despite lacking the authority to do so. This pattern created strain on school leadership and staff, and at times placed employees in difficult and uncomfortable positions. In at least one instance, a staff member felt compelled to block communication during the nature and frequency of the outreach. Over time, this environment contributed to my decision to step away from school committee after 13 years of service. This report raised broader concerns about the impact of this kind of behavior on staff retention and the working environment for town employees more generally. The conduct described in the report is therefore consistent with the behavior that has occurred over time across multiple areas of town governance. I believe the public deserves to understand the broader context. Thank you for your attention. Sincerely, Amy O'Connor. It looks like that will conclude public comments, and we will move on to new and old business, beginning with the discussion and possible vote on the potential resolution to censure Select Board Member Mary Ellen Fletcher for violation of Chapter 5, Section C, the code, Section C, conduct in relation to town staff, and Chapter 5, Section A, conduct in relation to other town officials in the Swampscott Board and the committee code of conduct. So we, when this came onto the agenda, we approached KP and asked for what would be, having not ventured down this road before, an appropriate form of censure related to the findings from the investigation. KP came back and gave us a draft censure for all of the violations related to that were part of the findings. That is what was reflected on the agenda. However, as the chair, I would like to recommend that we only consider the violation for Chapter 5, Section C, which is conduct in relation to town staff. And given the back and forth communications that have occurred from all the public comment and that have been sent to us to all of us regarding the conduct in relation to other town officials. You know, everybody shares some burden of blame here. And so having heard the feedback from the community, my primary focus and what I asked the board to primarily focus on is the conduct in relation to town staff. Because ultimately, the public has a way to get rid of us if they don't like us. That is, they don't get to vote for us, but town staff doesn't. They're here to work for this town and to put in their time and energy. And they're sometimes put in positions, and I think we've heard from quite a few today that this is not an isolated incident. I think some of us have tried our very best to solve these problems outside of tonight. And we are here nonetheless. So that is my request to the board to consider.
Should we give Mary Ellen a chance to speak first, I assume? Or?
I can speak last.
So I guess what I would suggest is we entertain a motion to amend the censure to focus just on the town staff section, and then we can begin discussion if anybody wants to entertain that motion.
I'll make the motion.
Do I have a second?
I will second that.
Okay, so we'll begin discussion. Don't be shy, guys.
It's a lot to take in, for sure. I do just want to correct one thing for the record. There was no decision about what to do in executive session. So this is a complicated matter, as everyone has expressed. And I think, speaking for myself, obviously, that I value, as I have shared with Mary Ellen many times, her deep, longstanding commitment to the improvement of the town. I know she works.
Come closer, Doug.
Yeah, thank you.
I don't have to repeat all that, do I?
No.
You sure? Okay. I know she works incredibly hard and is very committed to the improvement of the town. So while I know there are some people that are very mad and have experienced unacceptable things, I don't feel like it's my place to make a judgment, nor do I really feel like it's particularly our place to discuss resignation. What I do feel like is in our purview is censure. And obviously there are many, many different opinions about this, and equivalencies or false equivalencies in terms of what's happened in the past. What we do have in front of us right now is, in my opinion, the most extreme example that I've seen of commitment going way beyond, and the board has pursued a very deliberate process with an outside, independent investigation, completely, as far as I'm aware, devoid of any select board influence, except for those people that were interviewed as part of the process, and returned a clear, problematic fact pattern. And so I frankly don't even really feel like I have a choice at this point. Mary Ellen did apologize last week. I will say that I felt that was not as understanding of the magnitude of the offense, in the strength of the apology, and it didn't sit well with me afterward. And so I feel as though for those people that have experienced this type of behavior in the past, and particularly, as Katie mentioned, especially for town staff who really don't have any other recourse and didn't sign up for this type of instruction, I think it's really, really important that we draw the line, and I know people will be frustrated that we didn't draw it at a different point. But I don't think that absolves us right now of just looking the other way. So that's my rationale for why I feel like this is an important step for us to take.
So I'll go next. It's a little high, sorry. So the biggest thing that comes to mind for me today is we're damned if we do, we're damned if we don't. Because there are people who want to sit here and say, and hold us accountable for not doing something. And then there's a whole other group of people who want to say, why now? Why is now the time to start picking apart certain issues? For me, two things can be true. When a member of the Board of Assessors was here and had a difficult time with Mr. Grishman, I publicly thought and said to Mr. Grishman, sitting to my right, how out of line I thought that was. That can be equally true to how I feel about this situation being equally out of line, maybe more so. For me, first I want to apologize for any of the town staff who's here and had the guts to get up here and say stories that they've probably said in the past and none of us have really done anything about. Because that is a position where it's not an enviable position, it's painful. And I apologize on behalf of this board for anything that anyone has gone through. But the people that came here tonight are not the only people I've heard from. Town staff, board members, committee members, regular people that live in this town. All of them have equal weight to me. And I'm not going to sit here and go through every single person who's told me something in relation to this situation. I would never do that. But there are lots of people who are afraid to come and say anything today. And I give that a considerable amount of weight also. None of us, I don't think any of the four of us want to be here doing this. I really don't. I know I don't. I did not sign up to be a select board member to sit here and play good cop, bad cop, and mediate between two grown adults. I've said that before. I have publicly asked everybody on this board to start being civil, to collaborate, to work together, not with just the other four people on this board, but with the other committees in this town, the other elected officials in this town. I've done it publicly, I've done it behind the scenes, I've done it every which way from Sunday. And sometimes it just doesn't land, and it doesn't work, and people don't listen. So to those people that say, why now? Because if ever we have to stand up and say, enough is enough, I think this is the time. To me, when I read the report, when I listened to the police, it took a different turn for me. It felt more severe. I am not blind to other instances that I feel like this has happened. And again, I'm not sitting here trying to throw stones at anybody, but I'm here because I'm blunt, because I'm direct, and because I do what I think is right. And that's all I can offer, right? I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm perfect. I've never said that, contrary to Mr. Demento or anybody else that thinks that. I am so sure that I have not made the correct move every single time, but I am also really sure that I've never done anything like this. And I am not here to get anybody. I'm not here to act like anything other than one of 5 on this board that is trying to do things for this town that actually matter. This stuff doesn't. This doesn't help the 15,000 people who put us here. And I am so tired, quite honestly, of wasting time dealing with it. But at the same time, I'm not going to shirk responsibility. We have to deal with it, right? And, you know, I'm happy to do that. I'm not happy about it. You know, I did certainly, I had the Tides call, and I certainly did give them my full opinion on what I thought about this. I'm not going to go over it again. I'm happy to entertain anyone who wants to call me or email me and has a question about how I feel, from my own experience, as well as listening to other people out there. You know, but by no means does this mean that I discount anything that pointedly Mr. Grishman may have done that I have very often publicly disagreed with. And certainly, if he were to remain on this board and exhibit the same type of behavior, like, sorry, David, but I certainly would hold him to task the same way I am today. 2 things can be true. It doesn't mean you're part of one camp because you are taking a stance here. It just means that at some point, somebody has to stand up and do what's right. Pardon? How do you know I didn't? How do you know I didn't? It's not, but I'm happy to answer it.
I know, but let's not engage. I'm sorry, but there was time for public comment, and this is not the time for public comment, so thank you, Danielle.
Sure.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
Additional comment?
Want me, do you have any more additional comments?
I'm asking you if you have additional comment.
Sure. I said last week that I take full responsibility for what I did. I made a mistake. I violated the code of conduct. I made a mistake. And I'm sorry for it. I said I would do better. And I would really like it if you could just take your vote so we could start doing some real serious business and take care of the issues that are really important in the town right now with the budget and everything. I have made a mistake. I take full responsibility for it. I apologized last week. I'm apologizing again. And I really don't know what else to say other than that. I apologize.
So just quickly before we move to a vote, I just want to say, nobody up here more than me does not want to be doing this. I have cultivated a relationship with Mary Ellen over the past 4.5 years, and while not everything happens publicly, I have spoken to many board members about their actions, about the way they speak to one another, about the lack of respect, about how we can uphold ourselves to certain professional standards, about where boundaries exist, and it's an unbelievable mental load for everybody to put that on the chair. I am not responsible for the grown adults on this board. I am responsible to try and keep order and make sure that town government continues. It has likely, I don't know why things didn't get to this point with David, to be honest, and I wasn't responsible to take things to this point with David. I am responsible to take things to this point as I sit in the chair position now. And as much as I don't want to be here and have asked and have tried to get to a point where we aren't here, we are here. And it has just been a very complex and complicated position to be here. And I have had a chord ring with me the same way that town staff has about that feeling of pressure, intimidation, disappointment, built on relationships. This is all built relationship building, right? And And it is difficult for me to be here because I don't want to be here, but that doesn't mean it's not the right place to be. And I think at this point, we have to put our boundary down and stand up for town staff and just make them understand that we hear them and we see them. And going forward, keep that boundary in place and not let it get to the point that Mary Ellen or anybody else on this board has taken it to. And again, I can't say why we haven't gotten there in the past, but all I can do is, as chair, say that the commitment I made when I took chair was that I might have to get here. It's unfortunate that I am, and I'm displeased that I am, but we are nonetheless. So I'll entertain, if nobody has anything additional, we'll entertain the motion as amended, which is to reprimand and censure Select Board Member Mary Ellen Fletcher for violations of the Chapter 5, Section C, Conduct in Relation to Town Staff of the Swampscott Board and Committee Code of Conduct. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
Opposed.
Well, so I don't know if you can vote. Do we have a motion on, do we have feedback on that?
The opinion of KP is that it's implicit that the person who's the subject cannot vote because it needs to be a unanimous vote, and it would render the entire thing
Pointless.
if the one dissenting vote is the person who is the subject.
Okay. So going forward, then the vote should reflect 4-0 with Mary Ellen not being able to vote. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, which is discussion on the IDDE and sewer laterals. Gino's here this evening.
If I could just speak to it briefly, this was at the request of Mr. Grishman that we have a somewhat brief discussion about a process that has been ongoing dating back to 2017, where improvements have been made on the IDDE work, in some cases on private property. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone's sort of on the same page going. Gino's available to share a brief overview and then answer if there's questions that the board may have, but we don't have a presentation, Danielle.
Okay,
That's
thank
why
you.
I was,
That's what I was
that's why
looking for. Thank you.
trying to give Gino's available to give a brief update and then obviously answer questions as we go.
Patrick, would you mind passing your, thank you.
Can I just ask a question? Like, why, I'm confused, why are we talking about this? Are we talking about the future on how to do IDDE, or?
So it came up in conversation last meeting about
Right.
the fact that private sewer laterals were being replaced by the town.
So they're done in the
And-
past?
Yep, so this is direction, we received some additional information from KP about if anything could be done for what we've done in the past, and then what can be done going forward if
So-
that was no longer the policy that we wanted to do.
If
Go
I
ahead,
can just,
please.
we're doing it because it was on the agenda. We wanted to make sure that Gino could answer questions, but to your point, I think, questions can be answered around the decisions and the process we've gone through. We do have one option that Patrick can speak to a little bit going forward, and that was what we also wanted to share with you all. We have discussed here, it's just that we will lay out what we anticipate looking into, and we can, of course, come back as we explore that a little more, but I'll turn it over to Gino on the...
Well, it was also brought up in the context of the budget, right?
Yeah.
It was
Right.
the fact that David made some claims that were astounding to me, that were referenced by someone else about how much money had been spent on these things, and here we were, nickel and diming other things, and we were ostensibly, potentially, all of us somewhat collectively. It certainly wasn't Gino on its own from my perspective. We collectively had, engaged down this path.
Right.
And it's a gut check to see, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So quick overview, we've heard this many times. On November 23rd, 2015, a consent decree between the United States and the town of Swampscott was entered into U.S. District Court with the intention of identifying and eliminating non-stormwater discharges to the sewer system as required by the Clean Water Act. So back then, Tom Younger, town administrator, and I met with the EPA. They told us we're in violation of the Clean Water Act. Said, how do we want to resolve this? They said, it's not up to us to tell you. You need to resolve this on your own. They hit us. They were initially trying to fine us $125,000. We negotiated it down to $65,000, which still was hefty in my mind when I said we could take that $65,000 and utilize it to repair in our system.
Or use chlorine. Sorry.
No,
That was brought up as well, because I said we don't have an issue right now because we are chlorinating. Anyways, before I left the office, EPA representative said, I know you asked us how you want to resolve this. We're not going to tell you how to resolve this, but we're going to give you a little information. Why don't you head over to Norwood and meet with the DPW director there? He's under a similar consent decree, and he said success in cleaning up his illicit discharges. Sure enough, Dave Peters and I make a trip over to Norwood. I meet with Mark Ryan, DPW director over there at the time. Just a little aside, he said, how long you been the DPW director in Swampscott? At the time I said 12 years. He said, that's unheard of. Who lasts 12 years in a town?
Today, do you know how many?
Almost 23. So one of the things that Mark said to me is, Gino, I'm going to give you a little advice. We lined all the sewer mains in town. We didn't do the laterals at the time. Once we replaced the laterals or relined them, we went back, tested. We didn't get the results we were looking for. We had to go back into those neighborhoods a second time, disrupt everybody, put out a second contract. We weren't getting the economy of scale we should have the first time. By doing the laterals, we got pretty good results. Took that advice, went back to Kleinfelder. Kleinfelder thought it was a good idea. I supported that. I always said it was my recommendation. I don't know if it was ever my decision. Tom Younger was the town administrator at the time. We sat, and that was the direction we decided to go. Phase 1A. Subsequent phases, we've done 1A, 1B, 1C, and we're just almost complete with 2A right now, and we've continued to do it. It's not that they ever hid this from anybody. I've stood up there many a times and said, we're doing the laterals. If someone had directed me not to do them, may not agree with them, but I have bosses. I wouldn't have done it. As I said, never hit any of these numbers. I can give these to you right now because I know there was some concern. So to date, through phase 2A, we've invested about $9.8 million into relining sewer mains and laterals. To date, we've spent $2.9 million doing the laterals. So, yeah, like I said, never hit it. It is what it is, which if you look at construction costs, to replace the laterals, really to reline them, you're looking at about 42% of the contract. When you add in engineering, police details, and other incidentals, that's what gets us to the $9.8 million. Now you're looking at 30% of the cost at the 2.9 is went to sewer laterals. And in a nutshell, that's it, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Maybe before we get to questions from Gina, we can move on to Patrick's piece of the conversation, which is, I know you all spoke to KP about if there was anything we could do going backwards, and you have an answer, and then is there anything potentially we could do going forward?
Oh, Mike.
So in terms of the work that has been performed on the sewer laterals, there's nothing that would enable us to reach back and assess individual property owners for work that was done. Going forward, there's a mechanism in state law called a betterment. There's a procedure where through town meeting at the approval of the project and then through an assessing board, which in this case would be most likely the select board, would choose to pass on costs proportionally to owners benefited from these types of improvements. And those would be available either, to pay up front or through installments through assessments on the real estate bill for that individual property. So that's kind of high level option going forward.
Can the betterment assessment be paid at passing of title also? Or is it just in installments?
Yeah, so it's not required to be paid off at passing of title, but certainly I think for anyone who's selling property and getting financing, they'd probably expect that to be paid off at closing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how much, how many, like, how much per lateral? Roughly.
Roughly about $3,000. In the line item, it's $2,500 per lateral, but then the incidentals about video and repairs, I averaged all that together to get about $3,000.
So just assume you're trying to get at, how many laterals have we actually done?
Yeah. Well, no, actually,
Oh,
I
no?
was getting at, like, how much of a big benefit have the people,
Oh, I see.
received that this has already happened? I mean, is it a $30,000 value? No, it's a $3,000 value, yeah.
Probably not because of the economy of scale on a contract like this. If you were to call in this company, reline your lateral right now, it's probably going to be between $5,000 and $10,000.
But it's only costing us 3 because we have
We did.
other contracted work, they're already there. Yep, volume
Doing
discount.
500 right in the contract, right?
So how many laterals then, quick math,
I had that number.
do you think we have done?
It's 1,000, right?
Hold on, 2.
1,000?
It was 500 and something as of,
Wouldn't it be-
no,
I had that number here.
I know.
I'm like,
Does it matter?
forward?
It does matter for the conversation, just for equity, I think it
It
does
is.
matter.
I'm going to get,
Well, 3 million divided by
3,000.
3,000,
right. But it's really, in Phase 1 improvements,
500?
we did 470 of them.
Okay.
And it was a difficult decision for me because obviously I know a lot of people in town. Somebody's having an issue with their sewer lateral on the opposite side of the street. When I say the opposite side of the street, we only line the sewer laterals that crossed over the drain.
Yeah.
So when someone came to me on the other side of the street and said, can you do mine too? You know what the obvious answer was,
No.
right?
So wait, I'm confused now.
Yep.
What am I doing wrong? $3 million divided by 3,000 for each one.
Yeah,
That sounds like 1,000 to me.
so
Are there other-
470, hold on. I just want to see how many we did in Phase 2A. Because we did 470 of them in Phase 1, when you combine A, B, and C. And then I guess there were only 77 laterals, so you're still looking at,
So the cost
600.
might be closer to between 5 and 6.
yeah, or
Not
maybe
3.
even more.
5,000 and 6,000 per lateral.
Correct,
Right. So,
per lateral,
right,
because it sounds like we're just over 500 total, right?
yeah, 77. I
Okay.
broke it down for you, if anybody wants to see how much they were charging us with each one, each phase, it's here. Why it was a little different is, it isn't just the sewer laterals, they talk about inspection, repairs, there's line items for everything in here.
Yeah, okay.
so I just have a few questions. So I understand that KP says we can't require residents to repay the $6,000 betterment, benefit, unjust enrichment, whatever we want to call it, here. Is there any way of sending a letter to see if we can potentially, I mean, this is ratepayer and taxpayer funds, ratepayer funds. We did just have an increase of 20+% to our water and sewer bills. So, I mean, I just have the best interests of the taxpayers and ratepayers at heart. Is there anything that we can do, even on a voluntary basis, to say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. John Q. Public, we took care of this. Is there any way that you can write a check to the town of Swampscott to reimburse these costs?
I cannot imagine that we would be prohibited from requesting someone make voluntary payments to the town. Certainly, I would distinguish unjust enrichment from betterments. Betterments are a technical term used in municipal government to fund projects like this. So I just want to make sure.
My apologies.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we're all that we're all on the same
Just
page.
enrichment has more legal tenor than a betterment in the way that you utilized it.
So I'm sure that we could ask. I would also just underline and highlight that this work is done with the ultimate goal of getting out from under the consent decree.
Right.
Sure.
And so there is a net benefit to the community at large, whether someone makes a voluntary payment or not. If we were to make that request of the folks who have had this work done in their private property. But the ultimate goal is that we want to get out from under the consent decree as soon as possible, and strategically the decision was made early in this process that this would be one of the tools in the toolbox to try to get to that goal. So I think we would be more than happy to work with KP, maybe even the former acting town accountant and other, like, we have other consulting services to see what is a way that we could frame this, what is a way we could send it out. I wouldn't want to, again, sort of balance anything on that. It would be wonderful if we were to get some to sort of lower the load on the rest of the ratepayers, but there's not an expectation that we can set that someone would be required to pay for work previously completed like that.
No, understood. I guess the other question is, moving forward, how are we going to handle these, these types of, how are we going to handle this moving forward? Because right now we're still using public dollars on private property.
Yeah.
Well,
For a public purpose.
I'm going to throw,
Really
yes, I'm going to
not
throw a
private
curveball
property
into
either,
this.
so.
Sorry, buddy.
It's not private property?
Well, half of it is on private and the other part's on public.
Right.
But it's for a public, it's for a public purpose.
So that's, I'm going to go at it a little
Yeah.
bit differently. Same.
Okay.
Is there any private benefit, truly, to having one's sewer lateral lined?
Shiny and new.
I mean, really, does it help the homeowner whatsoever? I mean, the only benefit that I'm aware of is actually cleaning up the beach, right? I mean,
I think in
just
fairness,
to recast it a little bit.
I think in fairness to the point that I think David is raising, the benefit is that if we identified that there was some significant problem or there was a crack that was been sealed by the use of this lining project that we have, then yes, there's a benefit at some point that would become a problem for the property owner, potentially. So there's certainly a benefit that they could derive if there was a leak or something that was solved by the work that we were doing.
Okay.
Because to David's point, homeowners are responsible for laterals. It's true for water service and sewer service.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my point's just a tiny bit nuanced, which is, yes, but the public purpose overpowers the private benefit, which is to get out of the consent decree, to get the beach clean, and to be on the right track with how we maintain all of our sewer and water infrastructure. And I'm not denying David's point that there is a private benefit, but if the public benefit outweighs the private benefit, then is it not a worthy pursuit? And I think it is ill-fated for the board to go back on something, sort of a decision was made. And yes, we're in hard economic times now, so maybe we can't make that decision going forward. But I don't think it's the right approach to go backwards, even to voluntarily ask homeowners to do that. I don't think that's the right use of time. But I do think going forward that we could do a little bit more. I would like a little bit more information about how betterments work, how a resident is notified, what sort of option they have, whether or not to participate, can they pay it up front, is it 100% their cost? I mean, obviously there's a cost savings based on economy of scale that we were just talking about. I just would love to understand.
I mean, people don't even know that you had to go in line. It's not like a building permit where you
Right.
know you're adding something to your home, you're increasing your value, and you make a decision not to pull a building permit and pretty much steal from the town. Most people that had this work done didn't even know that they were having the work done, or was there even a crack in the lateral, or we just line the laterals to make sure?
We cambered them first.
Okay.
So some houses were already done and they were in plastics, so we wouldn't reline that.
Okay.
And like you said, 90% of them we did from the main. We never went into the homes, so they had no idea we did it.
Okay. Gino, do we know who has had their laterals done? Is that public information?
Yeah, I have every single address.
And the decision to do however many of these we did, that was Tom Younger's decision? Or was it yours, would you say?
It was my recommendation to
Okay.
let him know, and he supported my recommendation.
Right.
That was just on phase 1, and then phase 2, 3, phase 1A, 1B and 1C was Sean, and I guess technically 2A was me.
Okay, did you have, so that people can understand this process, did we make the determination on which ones, did people actually come to you asking to have their laterals? No, they knew nothing about it. So it was
Nothing.
us going through, seeing which ones
We went out.
were problematic,
Yep.
and then were the homeowners made aware that we were doing this for them?
When we got out on the street, but prior, they had no knowledge.
They had no idea. Did they get any official documentation?
Because we
Nothing?
cambered everything from the main, so we
Gotcha.
had to have no idea we're going by your house to do it.
And there's for sure a chance that they saw you on the street figuring you were fixing something that did not involve their lateral, and they have actually no knowledge that their lateral was even replaced by the town, correct?
Exactly. And then some people that I alluded to earlier caught wind that we were lining at one side and said, can you do mine as well?
Right.
We had even a worse story. I felt bad. There's a member of the
Right.
Water Sewer Infrastructure who paid $10,000 to have his lined and cleaned. And 2 months later, we went in and did the rest of the street for nothing. And he was
Right.
looking for reimbursement. I said, I can't.
Right. So for you to be put, I feel like this puts you in a really awkward situation because whichever ones you've done and you're being approached by people on the same street, I mean, I feel that it's not really fair to you to be put in this kind of, situation where you have to make the determination.
Well, I could just.
Yes, I can do it for you. No, I can't do it for you. It seems to me like we need some set of parameters.
We do.
We do have.
Right?
We do. We only reline the laterals that crossed over the drain.
Right.
Sewer runs center of every street. The drain is on the left side or the right side of that as you're going down the street.
Right.
So we only line the sewer laterals that crossed over the drain because we figured that sewer water was exfiltrating into the drain.
I personally would like to see a listing of which ones we've done and where,
Can you do that for you?
just to know.
Yep.
Just so the public can know, that there can be no other questions put out about this. So we're all clear, where they've been done, what streets, who the homeowner is, whatever it might be. So that should maybe ease some of these, questions that we have right now, or that I don't personally have, but, that others might have, maybe other board members or people of the public. And I think it makes sense for us to have documentation of whose we have done, just so we can have that,
Yeah,
right?
I don't
think
have
any
any.
homeowner would want that if they have.
I have all the addresses.
But I do think, too, that it was all in the interest of getting, being under this consent decree. And I don't think there was any nefarious intent, or, we're trying to do it for some people, we're trying to do it not for these people. But at the same time, if there was some type of conflict or ethical issue, I think it's fair, we need to be transparent about it and know exactly who has benefited. But to Katie's point, I really don't see how we could then go back to people and say, okay, well, we did this for you. Can you contribute something back because we're having a difficult financial year? That doesn't make really any sense to me.
I don't
Well-
want to spend the $3 million. I'm a ratepayer just like all of you. I'm guessing my bills might be higher than every one of you sitting up there.
Right,
Did
right.
you get your lateral cleaned? I'm just kidding. So I don't want to know the answer to that. I actually don't want to have the list. I have no need to know the list. You did what you needed to do, period. But I do think that it's reasonable for us to split the difference here. Because there's a public benefit and there's a private benefit. I don't think there's anything wrong with us going back to the people that actually had it done and voluntarily asking them whether or not they'll contribute and letting them know if we're going to do it going forward, and ask people to contribute half, is my suggestion, actually. If there's some public and private benefit, then, we are in a tough situation. And why not have people contribute? Because if we're talking a few $1,000s and you spread that over, however, with the average period of time that people are in their homes, this doesn't have to be a terribly significant impact for people. So that's my suggestion, is to find a balance.
Well, I find it difficult to tell people we're going to raise their taxes and we're going to increase their water bills, and then we're going to ask them to give us a couple $1,000s for something we did without their consent or authorization that just so happened to maybe improve their property, but at the same time really helped us for a situation that we're trying to get out
That's why I'm
from under
asking
consent
for
decree,
half.
but that's my personal.
That's why I'm only saying half.
Can,
Right.
as by definition of a betterment, can we even assess only half, or do we have to assess the full value?
So the nature of the betterments is everything has to be laid out in advance, so people are notified. You know, a project has to be approved at town meeting. An order of construction has to be passed by an assessing board, which would be the select board in this instance, laying out the area the work is to be done, and the percentage of cost that shall be recovered through betterments, and furthermore, the method of allocating that cost, you know, for different towns do betterments for all kinds of work. And there's measurements, you know, frontage of the lot, or, you know, length of lateral, like, there has to be some measurable that's defined in advance of the assessment.
I think Patrick's going to law school.
I know, I feel like he is. So then we could say, if it was the will of the board, that we were gonna assess a betterment of $1,000 for every individual whose house received the lateral repair, or lining. And that we would just ask for $1,000 regardless of what the town's fee was. That could be done under betterments.
Yeah, in theory, you can.
In theory, okay.
Yes.
I just wanted to make sure it didn't have to be the full value.
No.
Okay.
No, I think that's a very positive step, and I just don't think that we as a town can afford to do what we've done in the past, just given the current situation, and the continued work that needs to be done.
So we're hoping to wrap this up in one final contract. We're gonna probably have to move quickly, because for us to utilize the SRF loan that we applied for, we have to have a contract in hand, signed by July 1st of 2026.
And then how would we enact?
So I think, since tonight was a discussion and not a vote, Patrick and I have the direction to come back on either the 29th or the 6th. We will do it at one of the next two meetings with an outline of the steps that need to be taken and with a reasonable timeline of how we can get there.
Great.
Well, let me ask one other, you know, we had this whole conversation, we didn't really ask, how many more laterals do you think there are to do?
Another 300 or 400 in
Oh,
phase
okay.
2B.
Okay,
Yep.
it's worth it, okay.
Yep.
It's worth it.
So we can lay out the steps and what value change we may be able to influence. And although the board will be different, we understand it's a direction to be moving forward with.
Well, there's going to be a conversation about whether or not we're going to have another meeting before the election. But
I don't think that we could necessarily be ready for
That's
something
okay. That's
before
okay.
the election, is all I'm saying.
Also, I do want to say, because there is a distinction between this coming on the backs of ratepayers and, I mean, we used a lot of ARPA funds to pay for this work also. So some of the lateral work
Yeah.
is not necessarily coming out of pockets of ratepayers. If you think about the place by which we funded some of this work also.
Right, we saved 1.7 million on that, so what was the total dollar
Yeah.
value? What was the
Well,
total dollar value on the laterals? 3
Phase
million?
2 was paid out of
2.9.
ARPA money, so you could
2.9?
subtract $579,000.
But the total number you
Still-
suggested was all the 1A
All the-
phases and 2A.
In 2A, right, so if you subtracted the 2A, you're taking 579,000 out of the
Out of the two.
2.9.
So 2.3 and
So 2
change
point- Yeah,
2.5, yeah.
was paid with ARPA funds.
no, the other way
Yeah,
around.
other way
The
around.
other way around.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay,
So the 600, approximately 600,000 was ARPA.
okay.
we don't want to go back down the ARPA.
No, but
Sewer
if you
lining
think about it, if you
conversation.
think about it, as
Why
far
not,
as
Peg? We only have one.
money going into the work that would have come out of the enterprise fund, it would have been 1.7 million out of the enterprise fund if we had to fund that ourselves. So
Right.
there is a savings to all ratepayers of 1.7.
And it would be even more if we asked people to contribute more.
Right.
Yep.
Well, we'll continue this discussion since vote is not listed on the agenda. So we will continue this discussion at the next meeting. Thank you, Patrick and Gino, for
Thank you.
joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll move on to discussion and possible vote on the annual town meeting warrant for May 18th.
Each of you have the draft warrant. It is with KP for final review. We anticipate getting it back at the beginning of next week. The articles listed on the warrant represent all of the things that we reasonably anticipate including. And the one addition based on our last meeting was a discussion that I think the chair had and with Mary Ellen and potentially had heard from others around a potential charter change for the FinCom appointments.
Yeah, we're
So,
going to have a conversation about
I believe it's Article 12 or 13.
Can we just talk about, can we talk real quick just about the format on,
The format?
is the formatting exactly the same as it was last year?
So just before we get into copy editing, the actual motion that we would have would give us the opportunity to continue to work to form on, with town council and also with, Patrick and I, but are you suggesting that like the columns are different or?
Well, I'm just wondering here, I don't have last year's in front of me, but we have the actuals estimated for 2026, the original estimate. I'm just wondering if the setup is the same. Patrick, is the setup the same?
Budget summary.
Yeah.
The format should be the same as what was presented last year.
Okay, but I think, did that format, I'm gonna go back and look at some past, because I think we dropped a column. I'll go back and look.
Okay.
You mean we maybe dropped a column not last year, but years prior?
Yeah, year before.
Okay.
It's just, and then when I was looking at it, it just looked like we were a little short.
And the other, just for form, the other thing is, the one I had shared last week is the format that we will have it in. It looks a lot nicer, but it's harder to be editing. So we'll show you that final product in the end. This is just about the content and making sure that the articles listed represent the full intended articles to be presented.
So I do just want to have a discussion before we dive into the nitty-gritty here about the idea of Article 12, which is a change to the appointment process for FinCom. This is a charter change. Mary Ellen had originally brought it up as something to think about. I thought it made sense to bring it forward to the board to discuss, but also in the context of about every 10 years, we have done a charter review committee. And 2026 will be our anniversary.
There've been a couple of small edits, but that would be since the last whole.
Okay, so it's been, we started in 2006, we did it again in 2016, 2026 would be sort of 10 years prior. It makes good sense for good governance to have a cadence to do charter review where things aren't working. This isn't the only idea that I've heard in changes to charter. I've heard about moving elections to November so that this exact issue, which we're facing right now at this meeting, doesn't happen because new members are coming on as the warrant's trying to be opened and closed and the budget, and then, so there are a couple of, ideas being floated around. So while I think conceptually I agree with the change to appointment process for FinCom, I think it should go through a charter review committee to be thought through in the context of other changes also. But that is just my 2 cents, so happy to, be swayed in any other direction.
So I want to give the reason why I put this in here is because this article has been floated before, and because of the importance of appointing people to those committees, that I feel that waiting on a full charter review it just takes so much longer. And just doing, putting something in for a charter change, one article in for a charter change, I really don't see that as a problem. I'm looking at doing something with a little bit more expedience. It's really important that we have solid members on these committees, or just at least advertise to have members on these committees and not have one individual choosing it. When you hear a member of the Finance Committee, when you ask them, how did you get on the Finance Committee? And they say, well, I played lacrosse with the moderator's daughter. To me, that's a little troublesome. I think that, there are great people on the Finance Committee. This isn't taking anything from the Finance Committee, but I really would like to see something a little bit more in-depth or represented of the public, such as asking people to send in resumes and go through some type of a process. And so we're talking about two things here, is what would the process be? And I can talk about that, or should we just wait for a charter change? Now, for a charter change committee. Now, we did have, when David was the chairman, I think we had sent out information to all the committees asking for any recommendations on their charter changes, but that was now 2 years ago. So the question is, are we going to delay it even more and make another committee and, go through the whole process? It takes about, this process of an entire charter change is a long process. So I thought that it would be a good idea just to at least have the one article in and to address it and to get your ideas. My idea was originally to have the select board choose one candidate, the moderator choose another candidate, or the select board choose all candidates. There's, Marblehead does it one and another. Winthrop does everything by their council, which is similar to their select board. I forget what Linfield does. What does Linfield do?
It's split, but moderator has the majority. I
Yeah.
think in Winthrop, it's the council president. The council president has outsized power in Winthrop. It's not first among equals. So he works directly with the town manager. I can talk to Tony and
Yeah.
get more back.
Well, and the receptionist said that it was the town council that voted, so I'm just relaying for her. So I think we should have a discussion about it.
I don't want to change anything now. I totally get the fact that it seems a little odd. I don't think that we have any other committee that's basically appointed the whole committee by one person. So I get that for sure. But I don't think 1 year is going to, I do think that there could be a lot of different things that you might want to change, and what the impact is of the different changes. Seems to make sense to me that it really should go through a process, so.
I think we're sitting here on the 15th of April, and to propose a charter change, which is going to be, a dramatic change to the operations of our finance committee, should be fully studied. We did propose, a charter change around voting. We studied that. We seated a committee, and those recommendations were brought forth to us, in a clear, transparent manner. With the presentation, did it take a long time? Sure, but it also really brought about a number of ideas which we can then implement as a town. And I think it's important that we do take it through that process specifically. I do think we have, very dedicated, hardworking members of the finance committee. So I certainly want to point out the fact that they're working diligently on the budget, just as we are, just as CIC is, just as town staff is. So, I do think that they should be recognized for their efforts, and I think we should certainly look at that. And to Mary Ellen's point, we did collect a lot of information, a lot of data points from chairs and committees. Katie, I still have that information somewhere,
Send it over.
and I will send it over to you. I just need to gather it, but
Okay.
I do have it in a folder.
Be a starting point for a charter review
Yeah,
committee.
absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, I just think with the advent of a new moderator, that maybe we should work with the new moderator to try to set a policy and process in place for how the appointments are made, so there's some more transparency into how the new moderator will be appointing them. In the meantime,
It's good.
I think
doing
it's a
the charter
conversation,
review.
right? I mean, it seems to me to be in collaboration with even the chair of the finance committee. I'd like to know what the process is now. If people do submit resumes, how they actually get appointed, right? They don't just pluck names, or do they? I'd like to know what the process is now before I decide about recommendation to change. But I would like to do it in collaboration with the chair of the finance committee, the moderator, the new moderator coming in, not just kind of, isolated to us in a vacuum, but, because I do think it's going to take input from different areas, not just us.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think what we can commit to do, if it works, is commit to a charter review committee, understanding the time it will take. In the meantime, we can meet with the new moderator and ask for a process and procedure to be outlined for how future appointments will be made, so that we can have some accountability and transparency for the public to understand if they want to join FinCom, how they go about doing so. And then we probably should just motion now to remove it from the draft. That way, we just have a clear path forward. So if somebody wants to make that motion.
I don't even know if we need a motion.
Well, doesn't hurt.
Sure, I move removal of Article 12 for now.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great. That's unanimous. All right, so that puts that in a different trajectory. I won't say back burner because that means we're not going to do it, but we are. Let's go. How do you want to move through this, Nick?
Whatever way you all would prefer. The first few articles are standard. It's really not until we get past the budget, with the exception of making sure we have the same information we have historically for the note that Mary Ellen gave us. It's not until we get to, I gotta put on my glasses, sorry.
Has FinCom voted on anything?
No.
No.
No,
They
they have
anticipate voting, I think, at the beginning of next week. Is that right, Patrick?
Yeah, they have a meeting this Thursday and then another meeting
On Tuesday.
the following Thursday.
Oh, Thursday, sorry.
So they'll possibly be voting on warrant articles at either of those meetings.
Do we even have Article 2? It goes 2 and then 4, first of all. Is there a reason? And then-
Nope. Let me check. The reason is me, Doug.
Okay.
Just
You
wanna
don't
be-
like the number
And this isn't
3,
me,
or-
this isn't me taking responsibility for someone else. It's
So
literally
there's
me
a report of
misnumbering.
finance, and then it starts Article 1, 2 is here.
Oh,
counting, Nick.
where is it?
There's no page numbers, which might be helpful as a takeaway, just so I
Yep,
can.
it is. Thank you.
Bottom of the next page, right there where your
Ah.
finger is. So Article 1 is reports of the town boards and committees. Article 2, approval of the bills from prior fiscal year. And then it goes to amend an appropriation for fiscal year 26
Yeah.
operating budget, then 27 operating budget, which then is listed, the operating budget.
So do you want me to just walk through them real quick, and Patrick can also jump in? Or do
Great.
you want to just speed through the way you were doing it?
I mean, I think for the time being, we should just, until FinCom votes on these, we likely, unless anybody has some.
So we're not
cursory-
asking, yeah, tonight we're not asking you to make a recommendation or opine on the article.
Just,
The hope would be that if the articles that are included are satisfactory, that we could close it with the motion that allows for the form and the feedback from FinCom. You all would make your recommendations after their votes, as you're saying, but that way we can close the warrant at least. What, do you have a question, Doug?
Close the warrant.
Your recommendations are not part of this. This process is making sure that a citizen or resident knows the topics that they can anticipate at town meeting. That's what this is. The vote on the recommendation is separate, and it's something we want done prior to printing.
Okay, but, geez, you think I
So
know this
we-
already, but
we
like,
would- you
if the
use-
budget that's in here, we're not validating that that will be the budget that will be in here. You're just saying there will be a budget in here.
Correct.
Yeah.
the motion as town council suggests, if we wanted to close and go through this exercise, would be, I move that the board vote to approve the warrant as drafted, subject to further revision as to form by town council and the town administrator, and inclusion of the finance committee message and final budget.
Which are the two things that are
Which are
not
the two
in
things
here
that are
right
not
now.
Today, appropriate.
Wait, can you just,
Want me to read it again?
no, I'm just a little bit lost at what we're looking at doing. So it's open now.
Yep, it's open. We opened it
Right.
last week.
Got that. And we're looking at just, why aren't we just leaving it open, and then, why don't we just leave it open, and then when we have the information from FinCom, we just finish it then?
We could, but if substantively nothing is going to change except the budget that FinCom recommends, and we're not putting another article in, then the alternative is we could close it based on the article number headings. Nothing is going to get in or out, and we could allow us to move forward with recommendations after the closure.
It would give us more time to be preparing everything, basically. There is no substantive change that occurs. The budget will be in it. We'll see the numbers and you'll recommend or not recommend. The topics that are the individual articles of the warrant remain the same. So that's what opening and closing the warrant is, it's the topics.
Okay, and the budget that goes in here, no matter what, is the FinCom budget?
It's their budget.
Yeah, it's their budget. Yeah, we actually, just as a aside, we voted to move the budget to FinCom, and then they make, in the idea that they would approve it, and it would come back to us, but we don't actually have the ability to approve it once it comes back to us.
You're opining on their budget.
We will opine on their budget in the sense of whether or not we recommend it in the warrant, but.
Right, because last year we actually disagreed.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
And there's always the opportunity, page by page, as the moderator goes through, to make individual edits to align by any member or by a board,
Yeah. So is this exercise not valuable, or, I mean, I see some of the board members are
The only reason,
hesitant,
it seems a little odd, but it sounds like you find some value in getting it closed so that you can proceed with some work that you wouldn't otherwise be able to proceed with, so that.
In many communities, the warrant would open and close in February and March for a May town meeting. It's not always the case that towns keep it right up until the minute it's going to the printer. And so, since we do agree on the article topics and the general, contents, it's my request, but we can easily continue to put it into form to be prepared for printing. If you would prefer not to, it's just another, topic for a select board meeting that we would come back to for a second time, if that were the case.
I think the other thing is that we have all belabored the fact that we scatter to try to get the warrant closed at the last minute, and if we don't have to do that because we're all in agreement on the topics, why are we putting ourselves through that exercise?
And just for just blocking and tackling, and I know I'm making assumptions about an election, Doug, but assuming that you and David don't somehow remain on the board, if you all close it.
Surprise!
If you all close it, the current board is the one that signs it, and it's a ministerial act to sign it before your replacements are sworn in. If you don't close it, I think the most likely outcome is that you all will not have another opportunity to do it.
But that's assuming we don't have another meeting before the election.
If we have a meeting on Monday, you need to sign it before they're sworn in. So we're sort of needlessly condensing things, and I'm not sure what the ultimate change is that we're trying to avoid, and I'm happy to avoid it if someone can help me understand it.
Well, I think there's two things. I'm fine if you want to, I'm fine to close the warrant. That's fine. I think there's another conversation about whether or not we have another meeting before the election and whether or not we make any opine.
Yes.
As this board.
A different conversation.
Yeah. But actually, there's one thing. Is it on purpose at this point that we do want to have rodenticides in both categories?
I did put it in both categories to align with the discussion at the last board.
But ultimately, we don't want to approve the warrant in this form, do we?
That is the form in which it would have to move forward.
Yes, because she would have to withdraw her citizen.
She qualified for the ballot.
Does she want to opine on it?
That's not how this
She would
deliberation
withdraw it,
works.
so it would be, it's on there, we put it, and then the citizen would withdraw it.
So at town meeting is the point at which we would make that change. I've spoken to KP about this. We could end up having two votes about it. No, we would not have two votes.
No.
We would indefinitely postpone, or after she knows that we have acted on it, she would then go up and withdraw. Otherwise, you would put people in the position of qualifying a citizen petition, leading them to believe that it was going to be acted on and asking them to withdraw in advance, and then
we pull it, we rug pull.
So they're both there, and then only after action is taken would she, as the lead sponsor, withdraw, or the body itself could indefinitely postpone with a brief description from whoever the moderator is in the future about
What a circus jumping through
about
these
how to
things.
move forward.
Okay, so I propose we keep.
I motion.
Keep going, yeah.
I motion to.
You want a motion to close the warrant?
So wait a second, so if you want a motion, so if you're motioning to close it,
Yeah.
and then what does that do as far as our votes on capital and on the budget?
It's a separate thing, right? We always,
It's gonna be totally separate, and that won't go to print?
as it always is, right? I mean,
It will
we-
go,
yeah.
You mean-
first of all, it could go to print if we make them in time, if we make them, because often we have had times where our motion, it says, select board supports 4 to 5. or
Approval of prior bills.
5-0.
Right.
The
big
the article, but we also have had instances where I have walked up to the moderator and told him, we just voted on this 20 minutes ago, and
Same, yeah.
the warrant article has,
So Mary Ellen, you're speaking to the recommendation up or
Yes.
down, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
so we still will do that, and it will still appear in print if we are able to do it in time. And if not, the moderator will pull up the screen just like they traditionally do. Hopefully, we can talk to Ryan about that. Sorry to get a little bit off topic, but has anybody talked to the potential future moderator about the Old Town moderator used to hold these public sessions, which a lot of people felt were helpful in years that were complicated?
We did not talk about that,
Okay,
but
thanks.
I'll reach out to him.
Yeah. I'm not sure that this.
And now's not the forum necessarily, Doug, but.
I'm not saying that you would do it now. I'm
Yeah.
just saying that he might, the potential future moderator might be hearing us.
Okay, so, I just wanted to point that out from earlier. So Doug, did you want to make a motion? Because we are
I
really
so
dragging this.
want to make a motion to
Okay.
close the warrant.
Can we give him?
I need to read something specific.
Oh, yes, you need to read this, please. I move
Do you want
that.
someone to say his
No,
name?
that's what
Mr.
you
Town
wanted
Administrator?
to tell me to tell you to read that, the second bullet.
I move that the board vote to approve the warrant as drafted, subject to further revisions as to form by town council and the town administrator, and inclusion of the finance committee message and final budget.
Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Wonderful. Okay, thank you, Doug, for that eloquent reading. We are now moving on to discussion and possible vote on the 2027 preliminary budget as updated. Again, the agenda says possible vote because we're always going to say possible vote until we vote. But FinCom has not voted on the budget. I think it is their intention, I spoke to Eric before this meeting, and it is their intention to do so prior to either the 27th or the 29th, because Doug doesn't want to leave us apparently. And so then hopefully we could take a vote at that time. But I mean, this is sort of the last space before FinCom votes for us to have opinions. I mean, obviously we can have opinions at any time, but if we want them to be thought through and considered and brought into FinCom's consideration, we need to do it now. So if you have, recommendations that you would like to make that have not been brought to the table already, I would suggest.
And so what we included in the packet is the long-range financial plan, again, because we sort of stretched out the information a little bit to show, is it 25 and 26?
Shows 26.
Just 26. Sort of to the left side, and then to take the year-over-year increases out a couple of decimal points so people can get a better understanding of, 3.5 looks a lot more frightening at 4 when we're in some of these numbers, so to make sure everyone understands exactly where we're aiming, both for this year, but also moving forward, so we have something to be basing future long-range financial plans from. But we're also happy to answer broader or specific questions that you may have.
So you, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, if anybody hasn't watched the FinCom from last Thursday, I believe, there was a lot of discussion about the projections and sort of where people found hope in a hopeless place and where there were wiggle rooms. It is a song, yep. And where there was wiggle room and where, they sort of pulled a little bit back from doom and gloom and tried to find some bright spots in the projections. And so I think that is sort of the mentality that led them to the place where possibly this might be the budget. Whereas if the projections were not so great, maybe we would be looking at where we could find additional places. I think at this point it was discussed publicly at FinCom that we've cut to the bone, and if if we need to cut bone, we can, but the projections maybe allowed people to feel a little bit more ease about it.
I get the gist, but I don't quite follow.
Do you want to just watch the meeting and then we'll talk about it on Monday?
Where are the meetings listed?
The finance
No, I
committee
want
meeting.
a 1-minute summary, actually. Go ahead.
Those are recorded and available online.
Yes,
It's a
I'm
little-
aware, yes.
FinCom
thank you.
meetings. Could you, is there one that you can't locate? 'Cause
Thursday. I couldn't get
Thursdays, if we could
Okay.
produce them
will
for the entire board, that would be
Work
great.
with Joe and get
Thank
that
you.
online.
So
We thought, oh, go ahead.
I don't know, so I didn't see Thursday's meeting, but the fact that we're gonna be asking for an override, we're asking for an override in 2029? Because we're using all our unused levy in 26, so we're saying to people, you actually are getting an override this year, but we don't need to do an override, we don't need your permission because we have unused levy. And we're using how many dollars out of the unused levy for that?
We're using 1.7 and another 200,000 in levy capacity is leaving. That is not spending, it's
Right.
debt that is rolling off that we no longer have access to.
Right.
So what is it, 1.7, and then it's
Right,
another
Patrick?
subtraction of,
Yeah, it's 1.8
that?
total.
oh, right here, thank you, Doug. In the line that says unused levy capacity.
1.8,
1.8 total.
so it's 1.6 and 200 rolling off.
Wait, in 26, we're using 1.8?
No,
No,
Oh,
27.
right
We're doing
here.
27 first
Right.
of all.
Got it.
We're using 1.6, but it might say 1.8 because that also is reflecting the 200,000 of debt that rolls off,
Mhm.
even though it's not being used to balance the budget, to make sure we're all on the same page.
And so what Katie was saying, so is the budget as it's listed here, what I'm understanding you to say is that FinCom, your gist from listening to that was that this was feeling more solid. And you made a bunch of comments at the beginning that amounted to
The
still
items
many
that are,
uncertainties.
items in flux, yeah.
Yeah, no definitive move in any of the big items that's landed at this point. Health insurance, trash.
The definitive move in health insurance is to come down from 14.5 to 10.
Well, that's been baked.
I know, but the final would be the census, correct, which we would not
Right.
know until the very first week of May.
Yeah. So
And I-
is that your sense, Patrick, that that's where, I'm not asking you to definitively state what the finance committee's opinion is, but that this is feeling more, I mean, we have a couple finance committee members here, but this is seeming like it's starting to land?
Yeah, I think something that they had asked for when the budget was originally passed to Finance Committee was this forecast, obviously. So having that in front of them and being able to look at the 5-year outlook, I think that brought a little more comfort to the group, just understanding where we're headed, because that is the lens you have to then look through to see this year's budget and what's appropriate.
And I think that's why I wasn't completely computing, because I think when we looked at this, I felt like that made us more uneasy. And so that's why I wasn't like understanding that the finance committee was actually feeling better about this year when they looked at this and saw the unused levy going away. So that's why
We set them up.
I feel like we're
forward.
talking in riddles here, I gotta tell you, because some of us think it's bright or brighter, some think it's not. We all seem like completely on 12 different pages. We do have some members of the finance committee here. Can anybody lend any clarity to what
They have
really?
not, FinCom has not voted, so it would be
Okay.
inappropriate for an individual FinCom member at this point to say whether or not FinCom will support it. So I hear what you're saying.
No, I don't need to know if they support it. I just need to know if we're in a dire situation that we've been thinking we're in, or if there's something that has significantly changed in the past week or so or whatever to make us think otherwise.
Let me clarify, because I think I maybe overstated the hope piece, okay? I think that in echoing what Patrick said, my gist of this was they could not determine whether 2027 was, is the appropriate path forward without seeing the projection. Once they saw the projection and realized maybe what levers are available to be pulled in future years, they felt like this would be it's not a positive path forward. We're still in it, in the thick of it. And we will be in the thick of it for a while, but there are mechanisms and levers to pull in to make sure that potentially, I mean, one of the board members had said, well, maybe we could get away with not using an override at all. So like, yes, that's conjecture, because who knows what will happen in 29, 30, 31, but.
So that's I guess my concern is that we're all sitting here with individual thoughts, some positive, some not, some neutral, and we're confusing anybody that might be listening, because we don't really know definitively anything, right? You're thinking maybe it's a little bit rosier. Mary Ellen thinks it's as dire, if not worse. I don't know what to think. Patrick doesn't know really. None of us do. I mean, so we're all waiting for FinCom, and I just don't want to give incorrect information out to people because we don't really know yet.
Danielle,
That's my.
I'm just looking at numbers. I'm looking at numbers that have been provided by our town accountant, our town administrator. And in 2029, we're looking at a deficit, which means we would need an override. So 29, 30, 31. And we're not in a better zone until we get to
Never.
32. No. We do we're in a better situation once the unfunded liability is cleared. It gets a little bit better. Plus, we also will have additional revenues coming in. But do we have a revenue sheet, a forecasted revenue sheet? I haven't seen that come in.
This just assumes the 425 all the way through.
Yeah, I think that's a problem.
I think
We need to.
So,
well, we talked
and
about
I think, but just really briefly, this is a snapshot based on conservative estimates, especially for revenue, but also doing our best to bend expenditures in the right direction. We do not want to balance something by saying we expect all $750,000 of new development to hit in a single year to make it look like 29 is really not that hard. The goal here is that this is something I can come back with you, with Patrick, in July, in October, and then through budget season every year to show where we are, and you'll be able to compare it to where our assumptions were wrong, because this will be available to everyone to see. These are really conservative. I'm just admitting it on the, especially on the revenue side.
Yeah.
Because we do not want to balance our budget on rosy pictures.
Right.
As we get closer to each individual fiscal year, my hope and what I would anticipate is that the numbers, if they're a deficit, will grow lower. They may or may not, to your point, Mary Ellen, close all the way. I don't want to promise any particular year other than the one that we're in. And to Mary Ellen's point, this is the second year in a row of deficit spending already.
Right.
By using excess levy. So like we are in this cycle where we've been doing it. What we talked about a little bit at FinCom was the idea that we do need to bend expenditures to try to skip along as long as we can with any excess levy, or to get closer to the point that Mary Ellen and I think Doug were both getting at, where when you get to the end of the funding schedule, we still have maintenance funding for our pension, but there is a little bit of breathing room. That being said, even there, like we move it immediately to OPEB, and that's one of the things that FinCom's like, maybe you don't want to do that. For sure. That's the direction that we'll get from you all as we get closer to that. But we think it's reasonable and responsible to say we are going to move that over to OPEB in our forecasts for now, because at some point we have to be funding OPEB. We can't, and we cannot go at the 50,000 or nothing at all.
Right.
That cannot continue forever. So it's both rosy and dire.
Right, so there's been no real significant change since last week?
No.
Safe to say.
No, I think the significant change was people, and I'm speaking for FinCom just based on being in there, felt that they had more context and color around how we had arrived at our decisions for recommendations to you all.
Okay.
And now there's something where we're, it's a snapshot, but we're showing where we were, where our thinking was when this came forward. And we're more than happy to be told, we really want you to do X or Y with a revenue or an expenditure. But this starts to inform longer term planning, and that's the only real goal with it. It is not meant to say a year from now that you all come back and say, you guys were so wrong, because we'll have told you in July and October, we were wrong, or things are trending in a direction that we did not anticipate when we spoke.
Right.
So
we're still basically waiting for direction from FinCom.
Their final determination, certainly on the 27 budget, for sure.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sorry for making that more complicated than it
No,
would be.
that's
I
okay.
think Mary Ellen might have questions, all right?
No, I mean, I look at this, and without having a little bit better projections on what revenue's going to be, and just looking at the 425, I'd like to have better projections on on what the revenue is going to look like.
What is?
Because at least in my mind, I can say, okay, well, here's the 425, we should be able to hit the 425, but we're also gonna have, this and this hit. But even with anything big, we're not gonna have anything hit. Like, the soonest we would have hit over in Vinnon Square, for example, the new buildings, they're not gonna hit until 2029 on the two buildings that you see going in right now. Because you have to remember, the assessed value is a year behind.
We anticipate assessing as a practice when any construction goes vertical going forward. We are not waiting for a project to be complete to do the assessment. What is complete on July 1st of any fiscal year will be what we are asking the assessor to go in and assess the value for. And that is reasonable and done across the state. It has not been the practice here.
Okay.
So it's, to your point,
It has
we
to-
don't
the
get it
project
all
has to
until
be
the last
finished,
year.
right.
But we get incremental growth in the interim so that we are capturing that increase in value.
And I think, Mary Ellen, from the revenue piece, the part I struggle with is if we project certain things happening in certain years and then they don't, but the projection, what was relied on to make a determination for the current year, then you put yourself into a pickle where people then feel like, well, we agreed to this because we thought that, and now you're saying that isn't true.
Right, but I think just having it, having some type of understanding of what you're looking at is helpful. I mean, and we should have it, we should have an idea.
Right, you don't have to, I guess maybe, you don't even have to put it on this sheet.
I was just
No, on a
gonna say-
separate, it should not be on
Okay,
the
sorry,
sheet. It should be
I was
an appendix.
I was confused. As an appendices, maybe we could just
Yes.
list out the
Yes.
upcoming potential projects that we think.
We presented it a few meetings ago, and it's
Okay.
a total of under $1 million in new growth. Based on the big projects. That does not account for tear downs and rebuilds and all the things that people do to improve their
Okay.
commercial and residential properties in town, but just those big projects, it's like three big chunks that add up to, I think it's 800 and something thousand. But we will absolutely just include it as a worksheet that we print along with this. It's a good idea.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's just the use of the unused levy, and, I know it upsets people. When I say I am not in support of the school sitting on a cash revolving fund when we're dipping into our unused levy.
So I know the hot revolving has come up a lot, but is there a motion you would like us to entertain related to it at this point? Because I think it feels a little bit like we have litigated it, but if you'd like to make a motion.
No, I haven't thought of a motion. I'd have to think about one.
All right.
Are we talking about capital next?
Yeah.
We can. Is everybody else all set for it?
Yeah.
Okay, capital, on to capital.
Where are we at with this track?
It's been upgraded from a C to a B, based on the CIC conversation this week that I was on with Nick. And so they have upgraded there from a C, nice to have, to B, strongly recommend.
Is that what?
They did hear from a couple of residents that were on the call as well, with comments about the track. So they reassessed that.
Is that what the yellows mean, changes?
Yes. They also discussed Burrell Street, as well as the police station fencing, which you'll notice are both highlighted. And Nick, I think you were doing something with the vehicles?
Yeah, so the idea with the vehicles that we will reflect in the final version is that right now there's 3. There's 1 at fire and then 2 with DPW and facilities. We heard what you said, it was only last week, but about the idea that we should do a more in-depth utilization. So what we would like to do is keep one $50,000 vehicle on this in case there's a Flintstone moment where a vehicle needs to be replaced because something fell out. But the idea is we may not even use it because we want to engage in that utilization study to really understand what the needs are prior to making any expenditure. But we don't want to be in a situation where we have a catastrophic failure and no ability to address it.
So I honestly don't, you'd have to explain to me why would we need a $50,000 vehicle? Why wouldn't we just use a $30,000 electric Chevy Volt, something like that?
I don't.
Why do we need 50,000 where I think 30,000 does the trick.
Well, I
Well,
think.
one of them is the DPW director, right? And I think there are times,
Yeah, that's different.
if that vehicle were to be the Flintstone moment.
Yeah.
Right, and then you wouldn't have
Something
enough.
traumatic happens to it, that vehicle does require it to be more than a Chevy Volt. It appears to me. Would you agree with that
I would
statement,
agree with
or-
that one.
Okay.
Okay.
So what about, just where are all these vehicles?
I'm just thinking, floods and, all sorts of things, right? So,
Yeah.
Electric cars and floods don't mix.
oh, that's true too. I was
Yeah.
thinking about height, but
Dangerous.
that's a good
Hold
point.
on here.
Floods.
I guess, I think that police station fencing and improvements, I think this can wait it out. That's my opinion.
Which one's that, the fencing?
Yeah.
The fencing.
Which went down to a B.
I guess I'm looking at it that, my opinion is we have to have this track. And it's a facility that I think the town needs, it's a facility that the town needs and uses. So so I'm just going over my opinion.
Is your hope to sort of not necessarily dollar for dollar, but get as close to saving by pushing out or
Yeah.
eliminating project value
Yes.
to fund that?
Yep.
If I,
To s-
go ahead.
It's one of my
To
hopes.
say it more specifically, now that they've ranked the projects, what are they actually asking?
Because there's not a total here,
Yeah,
is there?
at the very top,
Oh, there
I
it is,
think.
yes.
So there's $480,000 in C-ranked projects. There's 1.652811 in B-ranked projects, which $1 million of that includes the track. I think for our conversations and purposes, we've made it very clear that that is actually an A-ranked project. And so if the board will indulge me, I will venture to say the B-ranked projects for us are $652,810, and the A-ranked projects are $6,006,725,000. Because I think this board has made it clear that the track is an A.
I certainly think that CIC heard that loud and clear.
Yes.
And I think that FinCom has heard that the select board's priority is certainly that as well.
Okay. So then what's the exercise for us right now? Are we literally looking at C projects and saying, this is actually a next year project? Or are we, I'm just trying to take the temperature of my
Nick, have you
board.
had the opportunity to go back to the school department and see if any of their items are ones that can be pushed out?
I was going to say that a few minutes ago. Jason and I communicated earlier today about connecting to go through the prioritization again, see if there are things that they can push out. The caution that both FinCom and CIC has mentioned that these are still, nice have, must have, there's still things that we anticipate coming forward at some point. So it's not that we're saving this money forever. It's just trying to figure out the things that we can live with, or things we need now and can live without in the near term. And so Jason and I were going to talk about that tomorrow. We didn't have time this afternoon because of my calendar.
Right, because the Bs basically are the two school projects.
Flooring.
Yeah,
The flooring.
flooring and the space room, middle school classroom.
Middle school
space
classroom
improvement.
space improvements.
And I would just
That's
have
a
to
big-
assume anything that is like construction adjacent right now, the projection is just to increase. We're only talking about a year from now. I mean,
Yeah, but,
so are you really, what are we really saving by moving it to next year is all I'm trying to say. Because if it ends up being, if it's a $250,000 project that ends up costing another $100,000.
sure, you can make that argument about everything though, right?
Yep.
I mean, that's,
Okay.
there's a savings in the interest, if nothing else, for a year.
So, right, it's the middle school. All right, so you're going to be talking to the
Jason.
superintendent.
So does
And you changed the vehicle from 100 to 50?
Did we I didn't know if
It's
we
not
actually
updated.
updated.
It's
not updated.
But that's,
It will be.
I can do that in here?
Because
So
fire,
it's
it's actually going to be
150 and
less.
push fire out.
Because fire would be.
Everything's
Fire
out.
is getting pushed?
Everything, one vehicle for 50, the other 50 on that 100, and the fire 90, whatever, 92,
92.
94. That
there's
will
a
also be pushed out
140
for now so that we
savings.
can actually complete a utilization study and be able to say, next year, we come back to you all, CIC and FinCom, here's what we need, here's why, here's the usage. So that it's no longer, to the point that's been made this year, well, it's fallen apart, we can't do anything, we need a like vehicle. We're gonna actually look at it and figure out a process moving forward for future requests.
I missed that, but that's okay. I'm taking note of the fact that the high school paving and solar canopy went down, I think, from something to something.
Yep. C?
The what?
To C. So this was per my question in the beginning. We're going to apply for a grant for something that now we're not prioritizing?
The conversation revolved around the net benefit with the Inflation Reduction Act changing, and just very broadly, it's an unknown quantity from the government side, what we're going to be getting. Max has said repeatedly that the goal here is to do the technical assistance, which I think, if I'm not mistaken, is 150 of that 300.
Right,
Yep.
that's what, yep.
So that we can move forward and be prepared to go into the Climate Leaders Program for that significant slug of money. The request of CIC was that we get more information on the payback with a more negative view of potential government support beyond the Climate Leaders Program, basically. Because without IRA, without the inflation reduction.
I get that part.
Okay, I'm sorry.
But you're still saving money on energy later. There's all sorts of credits and all that stuff that may or may not be happening. I get that part. You're still saving money on the energy load long-term. So I thought we were all very aligned on this, and this is quite shocking to me that this is the direction taken, especially since the 150 doesn't seem like it's going to cover everything that's necessary to do the study. And now if we don't allocate anything, we're going to apply for a grant and not have the money to actually do the study.
They requested more information
From Max.
from Max. This is the rankings of the CIC. It is not the decision of the Finance Committee.
Yeah, I'm just trying to follow, make
Yeah.
sure I'm understanding if I'm missing something in the logic here.
No.
No, I think they're waiting for more clarification from Max.
Yeah.
That's why they have it graded that way.
Are we really clear on what the grants, like, what the return, these rebatement, the rebates that we got at the elementary school, those different programs? I forgot, I think there were two programs. I think there's one still in effect. Are we really clear on what those programs are? Because we got
No.
a significant amount of money back, and if we turn around and we don't do something, and we don't get that money,
I think, to Nick's point, everything is evolving, and a lot of those programs have gone away at the federal level. There still are potentially National Grid, because that was there were two sources,
right?
right?
Yeah.
So there still are National Grid, and, that may be evolving too, for sure. I understand there's uncertainty in terms of those grants and, rebates and tax credits and all that stuff.
Ryan has his hand up, just FYI.
We're really not supposed to
No,
be
I
entertaining.
know, but he probably has valuable information.
Patrick,
Hear from the-
do we have
Chair of the
anything,
CIC.
do we have any money left in any of those
It's
grants?
up to you all.
Yeah, I'm asking the chair.
Which grants are you referring to?
On any of those, electricity, the stuff that we got from National Grid and,
So those funds were spoken for already. I think we've talked about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I think.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
we used everything up?
Yeah, so they go
We
towards
patched the budget
project
last
costs.
year with that $1 million.
Right?
Sorry for the editorial, Patrick.
Yeah,
Sorry.
no, it's okay. I'll
That's
just
right.
add, because I was at the Capital Improvement Committee meeting, and this was something that they had asked me to go back to Max previously and get information regarding, which is the big blurb that you see plopped in the sheet there. And although the project is of interest, I think they reduced the ranking because with grant funding, there's opportunity and risk. So if you spend money now to do design and then you don't get an award for construction later, obviously the return on constructing the canopy may not be beneficial versus what it would cost to do.
I think
That was a factor.
to state that another way, your advocacy for the program would be useful in them understanding that that is a risk that's
That we're
we're willing to take.
Tolerable,
That
yeah.
we can design something, and if we don't get climate leaders in year one, we can have it ready to go when we
Year
apply the
two.
next round. The next pond, the next year of funding, whatever it is that they're doing.
The other way to say it is, if we don't do the study, we're never going to
never
get the $1 million.
That was
mean-
actually said at the CIC. I don't remember who said it, but someone did.
I mean, this
said
is
those are the exact words.
Well,
that
this is the
we may not
problem
get
with
it next
grant
year, but we'll
funding.
never get it in the future if we don't.
Right.
is that we don't want to put the time and energy into the pre-work for the grant funding, so we don't get the
Right.
grant, and then we criticize people for not getting the grant, and then they come forward to do the pre-work, and then we criticize them for the pre-work. So we're in this circle, merry-go-round of sort of,
Yeah. I mean, to the surprise of no one here, I will strenuously
Doug will
argue
single-handedly
for.
fund this line item, right?
Oh,
Is that
yeah,
what you're gonna
that's
say?
exactly what I was going to say, yeah.
Voluntarily.
Absolutely.
Voluntarily, we'll send him a letter.
Right after the Glover, yeah, right. Yeah, I think, if I'm understanding this correctly, that it was gonna cost $300,000 to do this study. The potential grant is $150, so our kind of matching basically would be really $150. So, just so the 300 doesn't, surprise anyone or scare anyone away, it's really $150 is our net cost to doing that. That's the risk, is the $150, basically. We wouldn't spend anything if we didn't get the $150 grant. If we get the $150, we're gonna spend $150. That's really what we're risking, but to be ready for a $1 million grant. All the work we did, the whole, a big part of the climate action plan was built around doing exactly this, and major buildings, and they're the major source. Do I have to go through all this?
No, you don't.
Of course I
No,
don't.
you do
So,
not.
okay, yes, right. So-
Noted.
Yep.
So I move that that's an
I
A.
get it.
Why is it 300 and not 150? Like, it feels a little fictitious.
Well, it always gets put in as the gross, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
the full amount,
right.
and then
Then it gets
the mechanism of funding is 150 through grant, 150 through
Right.
this.
Yes.
In many
It's like
cases, they're
Hawthorne's
reimbursement
still
grants
$2
after
million.
they're expended, we get it back type of thing as
Yeah,
well.
okay, got
We
it.
always fund the full amount.
Yes,
The
so
same-
allows us,
We had a similar discussion, just for everyone's benefit, around Earl Street, that
Yes.
Yeah.
there is a number in
Yes.
here, but when the CO is executed, or issued rather, the payment will be coming back, so the net cost for the
Right.
town for that is covered by the revenue that is generated. So that was a similar discussion, Doug, where we were talking about the short-term sort of risk of having it, the money spent, but knowing that it will never turn into the long-term debt or be bonded with other things that way.
So are we, is anyone joining me in that formal,
I
informal
join you, I join you on that.
direction?
I will join you.
Direction,
Okay, I-
absolutely.
I appreciate
It's an A, and I think it's short-sighted if we don't do that.
Agreed.
So are you voting on that, or?
Do you want us to? Do you want us to just
Yeah,
vote
why don't
on
you
it as
vote?
adopted, or what?
that way
Well,
we
you know
can-
what, the only thing that I'm concerned with, I would really like to hear what Ryan has to say about that. Nothing personal, Doug, but I'm just hearing one side, and
I think you just came off mute.
He did, Ryan.
Hey, folks.
How are you this
Hey, Ryan.
evening?
Peachy, thanks everyone. Enjoying the show so far. So just to recap, the discussion, I think what's been said is accurate. That the committee agreed that the risk, so we love the economics of the PV investment. We love the opportunity to take capital dollars to reduce our future operating expense. The reason we lowered the relative priority of the canopy project was because of the risk of either not receiving the funding, or that the economics of the actual canopy construction would not be as kind of juicy as it might be today. So we're all for appropriating the money as long as the language is contingent on receiving the grant to offset the costs.
Agreed.
So moved.
Yeah, great.
glad to hear.
So that's my motion.
Okay. Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor of making sure that this is an A and that the language in this reflects that, but for the grant funding, this will not be funded, All in favor?
Yes.
Aye?
Aye. Aye.
Okay, great. That is, consider that a settled. So then, again, I sort of go back to the original question, which is like, I was just looking for a motion to approve the,
I think from our stand, it will ultimately be approved by FinCom as well, so
Okay.
that you can opine on that. I think it could change the prioritization from 27 to 28 based on the conversation that Jason and I have, if there are items that they would like to keep on the plan, but they can make it through FY '27 without. He did not talk about a number or particular projects. He just said if you could send over the most recent version, that the two of us should connect so that we can see if there are projects that make sense for them to push out.
Okay.
So that's information I can share with you. We will both share with FinCom. That can be part of the future discussion.
I think the big thing is, you know, how do we fit in this track? So I think
Well-
as long as Jason knows, we're trying to do everything we can to fit this track in here.
But I mean, it's not like we have a fixed ceiling, right? I mean, you know, there's obviously, we can't just spend willy-nilly, but, you know, even if you included all A, B, and C, that's 7 million. Right?
What is, we do have a cap.
We have a policy to stay below 10% with debt, right, Patrick?
Yep, 10% of budget.
Right, and so what's the number?
So if everything in FY '27 is passed, we'd be at like 9.9 as the budget proposal sits today. So we're walking the line. It was the same case last year and the year prior. And so what I said to the Capital Improvement Committee and the Finance Committee was, you know, the decisions that you make now will affect capacity to do other things in those out years. There's a lot of competing priorities, so as you're looking at the items in the plan for '27, yes, we'll meet our policy now. There's a lot of things that we know that are out there that are big chunky things, especially when you look at projects that are on the larger side but may not go for debt exclusion. Those have to fit within our levy limit to fund.
Is that the DPW?
DPW, I had that planned on the schedule as a potential debt exclusion. It's $15 million building construction. I think that is a reasonable expectation, but there are other things out there.
but I think too, when we talk about that number though, I think, I don't know if this is helpful for anybody else, but I back out that 750,000 between the 600 and the 150 from the grant. Because really that is what we're looking, right? That is what we don't have an alternate funding source for.
So it'll be paid down.
It's just,
Is it
we
be
want to
paid
stay
down?
away from, 10% is where we want to stay away from that 10%.
We're not even close, though. I mean, you're right.
You said 9.9?
With
Yep.
this.
Well, we're at 7, right?
Yeah, we're at
Can we
7.
just not-
No. This $7 million.
7 million.
Puts us in the high nines.
Oh,
to stay
that's
under
it.
10%.
You're,
Yeah.
But the budget's 88.
It's all the debt service needs to be 10% or
all
less
the debt service.
of the budget.
Right, the budget's 88, so 10% would be 8.8,
Minus
Minus the debt service.
debt
Thi-
service.
minus the debt service.
Yes.
So what is the number we need to be at for capital
Okay.
to be comfortable or within range?
I,
Is there a number?
I think we might have crossed signals here. So the raw number of 7 million is not, that's the cost of these projects. That's not the borrowing cost.
Right.
Right.
It's the borrowing cost that needs to stay below 10%, that we will be at 9.9 or 9.8, wherever we are, and we have been for the last couple of years, if we were to fund all of these projects.
Got it.
And so then that borrowing cost added in would be what would get us close. And the point that, I'm not sure who just made, like the 750 of that would never make it into that bonded longer-term debt.
Right.
But that's still not, that's not gonna
It's not gonna
save
take
us
us
from
down
going
that
over
much.
10% in the long run.
Is it our gross borrowing numbers, you know, our entire gross borrowing dollars versus our yearly borrowing dollars?
So the metric in the financial policies is total debt service,
Yeah.
excluded and non-excluded, as a percentage of budget.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
So that's our policy, and then the rating agencies also stick pretty closely to that 10%.
Yes. So they're monitoring our liabilities, they're monitoring our
Right.
existing debt, our debt plans, They're looking at liabilities like OPEB and pension and
Right.
what we're doing to address those.
Right.
Those are really big things they look at.
And the 10% are the debt service,
Yes.
right? So we're really talking about apples and oranges here.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
we're talking about $7 million. I didn't fully get when you said it, but
That feeds into the debt
it
service.
feeds into debt service. It has nothing to do with this 7 million. It's the
The lower here, the lower the number we put into the debt
additional
service.
500,000 of interest on this 7 million.
But is there a
feeds
number
in.
we should be shooting for here?
Well,
It sounds like,
so if we're under 10%, it's a number that you all would decide on your own. It's like, that's the idea of looking at a 5-year plan, is to say, like, we anticipate these other bigger, chunkier things that are going to fall into just normal borrowing. So it's yes and no. I don't mean to,
well, no, but I think there's a little bit more clear answer possibly to Danielle's question, is that when you made that comment, Patrick, about 9.8, 9.9 or whatever, were you assuming all A, B, and C?
Yes.
Okay, there we go. Okay, so
Thank
even
you.
with all A, B, and C,
Thank you.
we're still technically under, but barely.
Right.
Okay,
Right?
correct.
Okay.
got it.
So the
That was
direction,
clear, thank you.
the direction they need is, do we want to take something out? Or are we comfortable at that, even though we're at almost the ceiling of the policy?
I would like to see the result of what you can figure out with the school department that could come out
Okay.
before we vote.
Okay.
And I know it's gonna make some people happy and some people crazy.
Please don't do it.
I can't help, I just want, vehicles, so clearly the fire,
The 92 is
Eh.
coming out, and 50.
Oh,
it's
the
gonna- it
92
will
is
come
coming out.
Yes.
And then
Oh.
50 of the 100 on the other page will come out, so it's $140,000 savings.
but the cruiser and cruiser laptop and
That's-
radar,
Those are staying.
that's staying.
Police is on they already have their own mechanism by which to evaluate vehicles. Is that right, Nick?
Yeah, and there's a replacement schedule that they are on, and we do everything we can to fund on our, that is really one where, like, we don't do it this year, it just means
Yeah, I
we
just
have
wanted to
failing
be clear.
vehicles a little
Yeah.
further down the road.
And the EV policy applies.
Correct.
All right, let's,
Did we have some discussion last week about somehow documenting this Burrow Street money? Or somehow,
Right.
oh, yeah, you did,
didn't we want some type of documentation to solidify, to codify what we're allocating?
Did you ever get a chance to look into that?
Yeah, I
The
did.
process by which?
I did, yeah, I did look into it a little bit. So, I
Thank you.
believe the funds that we were talking about was base rent from Pine Street project.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
1.5, yeah.
We would receive, in the language, it's like 1.5. So that would be accounted for as, would be treated as sale of land proceeds. You're doing a 99-year ground lease, it's a disposition. That goes into a segregated account. It would first be used to extinguish, any debt that was incurred to acquire the property that resulted in the payment. We don't have any of that because of how we funded it. So then that money would be available for appropriation for any purpose for which a town is authorized to borrow money for, so really any capital project.
in the capital budget,
Yeah.
you said, which is where this is coming from now. The 600,000 is coming
Right.
from right now.
Right, but there was supposed to be a specific designated account set up per a vote that we took in December. That's what we asked you guys to go find.
In December
That's what
Yeah.
someone mentioned, it was
of
December.
24?
December of 24.
Okay.
24, yeah.
I
We-
did,
We were setting aside this money solely for the purpose of, refurbishing 89 Borough. It was supposed to be, that's what we had agreed on.
Yeah.
So Patrick did exactly what I asked. Let me call Tom and ask about the sale of real estate. Because sale of real estate account is something that is part of state law. I'm not sure that a vote can redirect it.
I mean, we had run this through KP, this was not like.
Then
we've come up
it'll
with
be a
this
quick
before.
answer for me from Tom. Let me
Yeah.
just talk to him. If we need to, even though I just argued in the opposite, need to reopen and
Strenuously.
close, then we will do
Maybe on
so.
Monday we can reopen it.
I'll have the answer tomorrow, especially if it's something they've already looked at. He'll just go back into the
Yeah.
record and share it with me.
Great.
Because I had asked Patrick
Flow
to,
through this before we can, I'm sure we can set something up. but I wonder if it has to flow through the
Sale of real estate. account?
sale of real estate fund first, and then it goes in, and then you're
We'll-
saying it can
we
go
will
to
get that
capital,
answer.
but maybe it,
Yeah, my thought, my view, just not knowing the exact language of the select board vote, is that the state would treat that money a certain way. It would go into this account that I'm referring to, and then it would be subject to appropriation.
Yeah, that's what we talked about in December, is that even though we can make, we can say what we want, it's town meeting that has to appropriate the money.
That's my.
But hasn't
Well,
this
that was
money
the
already
point,
been
though.
appropriated?
We
or
had to
no?
put the,
no, we will be, the
But
600,000
didn't
is in
we
this
didn't
budget.
appropriate it?
no, we couldn't.
Town meeting
We're just setting up
Right.
this account and
Right.
s- and
Right,
and
in anticipation.
voting that town meeting, we wanted town
Would
meeting to
fund it.
vote on approving this account
Right.
so that the money would go dedicated to that.
Okay, so let's
Yeah.
get some more information so we can have clear direction on what we did in December of '24 and how we can move forward to solidify that if we can, and if we cannot, how we can honor the spirit of the vote, even if state law precludes us from creating a fund, how we can do our best to get to the spirit of the vote. Please.
Got it.
From the sale of real estate, it's easy to just say that that's how we're funding that capital, that part of the capital budget. That's the easy part. To understand everything else is what we will look at tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, just to be super clear about it,
Dougie,
What?
just to be Dougie about it.
there will be new people here, and they may
Yes.
have different priorities, and there will be new environments and everything else. And this was this was a semi-healing moment of a long, disparate chapter.
Let's not go backwards.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
I'll be happy to spearhead it in the absence of, in your absence. Because I do remember it the same way you do, and we did make a commitment, and I want to make sure we honor it, so.
Yes. Okay, so that concludes the discussion on the capital improvement plan. Thank you, Ryan, for chiming in. The consent agenda, I have a request to remove the minutes again from the consent agenda, so it is just the approval of the hawker peddler license for Sun Run. If anybody has any questions, otherwise I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. So select board report and comments before we move into executive session.
So what are we going to do about another meeting?
What are we gonna do about another meeting, Doug?
Yeah, well,
About what? Why do we need another meeting? Oh,
Because Doug doesn't wanna leave us.
yeah.
He's having regret.
I mean, the reason we had to meet this week was because of school vacation?
Next week.
So really Monday would be the only, the 27th would be sort of like the best next day because we need a couple of things to happen to make that meeting meaty, productive. So in lieu of meeting on the 29th, we could meet on the 27th and it would be us five one more time. The encore.
Or why not just meet on the 29th?
Because it
That's
seems
after the
like
election.
most of our colleagues who won't be here feel like they want to finish some
Oh,
business.
okay.
So I think we could honor that respect unless somebody has a conflict on the 27th. We can discuss offline, but I think we will strive to honor that request, if that works for you. Gentlemen? Works
Yeah.
for you? Okay. Does anybody else have any additional select board time?
I do. I had office hours on Saturday, and a gentleman had asked me if the town and the schools have an endowment or some type of a way in which you can donate money. So if what he was bringing up is in the event he was writing his will, and he wanted to leave money, like to pay for half of a tract, do we have a mechanism set up like that? So I know Jason Kalishman had said something to me about he wanted to do something like that, so I did email him, asking him, does he have that in place? But I didn't hear back from him. So could you reach out to him and find out, and then I can contact that gentleman? And if somebody wants to leave something to the town, like in a will or to make a donation, are we set up, is a town considered a tax write-off?
I would consult a tax professional for that. We don't give tax
No, I just-
advice.
Advice to individuals.
Right, but
The right answer.
But if the town had an endowment or something set up, like an endowment, 501c3, people could make donations.
So I don't think we would have a 501c3. I know that the library, as an example, received a donation of, was it stock or options from an individual. They can name the town. We would not set up a nonprofit to receive it.
Right.
We would just receive it. I think if they had a restriction that they would let, and this is the end of my legal advice, if they had a restriction
This is
that
not
they would
legal
like to
advice,
put on
Nick.
it, yeah.
This is not legal advice.
Better. This is not legal advice. If someone has a restriction they would like to put on how the money is spent when it's given to us, they should speak to their attorney to have it drafted that way.
So I'm just, on the other side, though, I'm just thinking, should we be proactive and find out, is there a way, should we have something set up where if people want to make a donation, that it benefits? I mean, private schools have endowments, private schools have, ways in which people can contribute money to a baseball field, whatever they want. I'm just trying to find out.
I think an endowment and a sponsorship for a field are different things, and it goes
Right.
back to my
Totally
first
different.
meeting when
Yeah.
we talked about the benches. If someone is giving money for refurbishment and we're honoring that gift and philanthropy with a name or a plaque, it is time limited. It does not last forever. And that process is something that we can absolutely work on. An endowment would be completely different, because we're talking about capital projects that require continued investment over time. If we're talking about a track or.
I mean, I think.
There is a foundation, the Swampscott Education Foundation, and it is coming back into, I don't know, like, it fizzled out for a little bit, and now it's coming back. There are 2 individuals who are running it. I'll get you their names, Mary Ellen. And this person could reach out to this foundation to endow
Okay.
their
Well, I mean,
work.
people could also
potentially.
gift things to the schools. They do it all the time.
They do it all the time.
And they
The
accept them all the
school-
time, so.
But is that the question is going to be, is that a tax write-off?
That's for their tax.
That's for their tax
That-
professional
that's
to
for them
understand,
ask,
not for
I
us to
guess,
answer.
Maybe ask the school department. right?
No, don't ask the school department. It is for their tax professional to answer. We cannot answer that question, because if we answer improperly and they make action based on that improper legal advice,
Right.
then we will be held liable. So it is best they consult their own tax professional. If that tax professional determines it is, and they would like to make a donation to the school, I've seen donations come forward for robotics teams
Yep.
and very specific,
Yeah.
very specific things, and the school committee takes,
Donation.
takes
gifts.
those donations in public so that
Yeah.
people are aware that it's occurring. So the answer is, we don't know. And yes, if they want to donate, we will absolutely take it, but we cannot comment on whether or not it is there are tax ramifications. Anybody else?
Yeah, just real quick. I know we're talking about having another meeting on the 27th, but in the event that we don't, I just want to take a few moments tonight, and I just want to recognize and thank my colleague Doug Thompson for his 3 years of service on the select board. Doug showed 2 of the things tonight that I had marked up for him. His advocacy for climate action and really pushing a lot of those projects forward is certainly most appreciated. And his advocacy for veterans, has been consistent these last few years. Certainly his advocacy to save the Glover. I mean, at times it was he, he was standing there. It was him with John Lehman and Nancy Schultz, and that was really it. But you've built you have really built this organization and really positioned this to the Glover to succeed and to survive. And thank you to that. But last but certainly not least, you're leading the way for bringing the Community Preservation Act to Swampscott is something that is going to really be seen, the positive impacts for decades to come. So I just want to say thank you, Doug, and I wanted to say that your work mattered.
Thank you. Thank you very much, David. One of the reasons that I wanted to make sure that we had another meeting is that, and I hope by the fact you saying you're not sure if we're going to have another meeting doesn't mean you're not going to show up. Your speech is coming in, so.
Also, David, you had a hand in the CPA too. I know
Yes.
Doug really took the reins, but you for sure participated and made sure that it came to fruition.
Actually, I'd like to even correct, David was the godfather of it, for sure, the grandfather, the beginning, so yes, it would not have happened without him.
I'll save my comments for the next meeting because there is a next meeting, and I will give two other public service announcements, which is, I don't know if you all follow the Swampscott Little League on Facebook, but I do, even though my kids don't play Little League. And Reagan Caggiano of the Reds threw a complete game no-hitter with 10 strikes in her team's season opener. So I just want to recognize Reagan.
Wow.
Yeah, in the opener. I mean, what a season this will be if that's how her debut. And I also would like to recognize Sergeant Brendan Reed, who, I'm sorry, Sergeant Kevin Reed, sorry. They must get that a lot. Who was off duty and was called on by a neighbor who believed their home was being broken into and stepped to action. Was able to take the help, whatever. He did his job when he didn't have to be honest, and it just shows the character of helping a neighbor and continuing to do his job even when it's supposed to be his day off. So want to appreciate and lift him up as a stellar community member for this select board time. So thank you, Reagan and Kevin. That if anybody else doesn't have anything, we will entertain a motion to adjourn. Nope.
Oh, a motion to enter into executive session.
Oh, I lied. Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you for the reminder. We typically don't do
It will be moving
this.
and not coming back to public.
Okay, so say again.
The motion.
The motion?
That we have listed, we're going to move to the conference room.
Okay, so
and then we'll be coming back to the public.
Okay, so the motion will be to move into executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A7, to comply with or act under the authority of any general or special law or federal grant in aid requirements. Proposed 7, the open meeting law, Mass General Law, Section 30, Chapter 30A, subsection 22FG, to approve and review the Select Board Executive Session meeting minutes from the following dates: March 2nd, 2026, and April 2nd, 2026, where votes may be taken. So I will take the motion, we will approve the motion, and then we will move to a conference
back
room.
to public session.
And we will not be entering back into public session.
So moved.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Oh, does this have to be a roll call? No. Let's just roll call it, just in case. Mary Ellen?
Aye.
Danielle?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
Doug?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Okay.
Night.
Let's move.